the streaming online. I'm Clive Hooker, chairman of this committee, and I'd like to say this is our first meeting in this municipal year. And I'd like to take this opportunity to give my thanks to Councillor Dennis Pennyworth for his chairmanship and to Councillor Tony Vickers for his vice chairmanship over the last year. The councillors attending this evening for this meeting are Councillors Adrian Abbs, Phil Barnett, Jeff Cant, James Cole, who's subsidising for is sub for Howard Wollaston, Caroline Culver, Lynn Doherty, who's subbing for Dennis Pennyworth, Claire Rolls, and as I mentioned earlier, Tony Vickers, who's vice chairman of this committee. The officers attending and advising the meeting are Simon Till, who's the team leader for the Western Area Planning, Maisie Masiwa, who's a senior planning officer, Cheyenne Kirby, planning officer, Scott Houston, who will be joining us on Zoom, planning officer, Paul Goddard, our senior highways engineer, Shaman Armour, who will be my legal advisor this evening, and Gordon Oliver, who will clerk the meeting. I'm also assisted by Thomas Dunn behind, who will be the Zoom host. Before start the meeting, I'd like to explain for the benefit of those watching that this is being held both via Zoom and with councillors present here in the council chamber. The meeting is also being live streamed on YouTube so the public are able to follow the proceedings. Please can I ask that everyone present in the meeting area to make sure they switch on their microphones when invited to speak and speak directly into them, and to switch them off when finished. Can everyone please put your mobile phones on silent and turn off the sound on your tablets. Regarding our safety this evening, if we hear the fire alarms, we must leave the building immediately. Please leave via a safe emergency exit, which will be shown to us by our trained officers present. Please follow any instructions given by those officers. The assembly point is the Dolphin car park over the road just opposite this building. If the lockdown alarm goes, we will remain seated and await instructions from the officers. I will then adjourn the meeting till such time as I consider that it's safe to proceed. I will be considering a comfort break during the proceedings this evening, and I will leave that to your convenience, excuse the pun. I will say equally that we do have problems with the toilets in the building. So unfortunately, if you need the toilets during the comfort break, I'm afraid it's either the Dolphin pub or the Market Street Shopping Centre. To be consistent with our council meetings, I'd like to remind members that we are subject to the council's code of conduct, which requires us to uphold certain standards. These being respect to each other and to officers and members of the public present. Members may not always agree with one another or the officers' recommendations, but I would ask that in any disagreements, we are always respectful of each other's position and views. I would also ask that we are mindful that officers are required to act professionally and impartially at all times in determining applications and providing advice to this committee. And they are expected to conduct themselves in a manner which preserves this position of impartiality in all they say and do. We all therefore need to maintain mutual trust and an understanding of the position of the legal and planning officers in this committee and of each other. We now get on to the business of the meeting, and we can move on to the first agenda, which are the apologies. Mr. Oliver, can you give me the apologies, please?
Yes, Chairman, we've had apologies from Councillor Dennis Pennyworth, and Councillor Lynn Doherty is substituting for him. And we have had apologies from Councillor Howard Wollaston and Councillor James Cole is substituting for him.
Thank you very much. Item 2 is to approve the minutes. We have 3 sets of minutes to approve tonight. Firstly, the minutes of the meeting held on the 16th of March. Members, do you have any observations of those minutes of the 16th of March? Councillor Vickers.
Just a minor one on page 9, paragraph 6. There's a surplus word in the second line. Was. Get that, Chairman?
That's noted, Mr. Oliver. Anyone else? Councillor Gore.
Thank you, Chairman. On the first page, page 7, where I made a correction to the minutes, I think the same mistake has been made, unfortunately. So it talks about the nursery facility. So it's not the fact it's not being needed, it's the fact that it can't be used. And that's why there's no access to it at the moment. I can clarify with Mr. Oliver afterwards if that's helpful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I see no more hands with those amendments. I'm quite happy to propose those. Do I have a seconder, please? Hand up, please. Councillor Vickers, thank you. So therefore, members, if you'd like, raise your hands, please, if you agree those minutes are a true and accurate record of that meeting held on that date. Thank you. That's all approved. I will sign those minutes. We now move on to the second set of minutes this evening. These were held on the 6th of April.
Sorry, Chairman, just to be clear, I abstained on that because I wasn't present.
Thank you. Thank you. 2 abstentions. 6th of April, any observations of those minutes, please? Thank you, Councillor Calder.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, in the condition number 4, photovoltaic solar panels, we did agree a condition that they would be brown so that they would fit in with the design of the local area. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more observations? No, I'm happy to propose those minutes. Have I got a seconder? Councillor Cole, thank you. All those in favour, please raise your hands. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Chairman, I'm abstaining because I wasn't
1
present.
abstention. Thank you. Those minutes have been approved. And Councillor Doherty, those minutes have been approved. I will sign those. And then we move on thirdly to the minutes of the 10th of May. These shouldn't be too much problem. This was just the election of chairman of the committee. Any observations? No. I'm happy to propose those. Do I have a second? Councillor Vickers, thank you. All in favour? Thank you. Those minutes are approved. I will sign those also. Thank you very much. We now move on to item 3 of the agenda, and that is declarations of interest. Members, any declarations of interest? I'll start going around clockwise. Councillor Vickers.
Chairman, yes, the usual one that particularly tonight, because all 3 items are Newbury. A member of Newbury Town Council, I took part in the discussions at that council level, but I will listen to the evidence and make up my mind. And I am predisposed on the 3rd item because I live in Westfields Estate, but I don't live anywhere near the application site. So I will take part in that debate as well.
Thank you. And Councillor Barnett.
Yes, Chairman. I'm also a member of Newbie Town Council and its Planning and Highways Committee, where all 3 applications were considered, and they obviously will be discussed tonight. But tonight, of course, I will make a decision based on the evidence in front of us.
Thank you. I also will say that I've received an email from a resident on items 4.3. I didn't know that person, and I'm not determined of any decision at this stage, so it will have no influence on me. But I just note that I did receive an email. Thank you. Item 4 of the agenda is the planning applications. This is the business of the evening. We have 3 applications to consider. The first one is 22/00493. This is the full application for Sterling Gardens, Hector's Way in Newbury. The second application is 21/03132, 14 Lime Close at Newbury. And the third application is 22/00648, 61 Russell Road, Newbury. Now, for the benefit of those attending in person this evening or watching online and unfamiliar with the meeting's format, I would now like to outline the process for each application before the committee this evening. The officers will present the application to committee. The drawings, site plans and deemed relevant material submitted on the planning file will be shown as part of their presentation on the screens in the chamber and on your tablets and laptops at home. I will then invite the representatives from the following groups to come up to the lectern in front or invite them into the room via Zoom to present their case to the committee. Each group will get a total of 5 minutes to speak. The order of the presentations will be first Town Council, then objectors, supporters, applicant and agent. And on conclusion of those submissions, I will ask the members of the committee if they have any questions of clarification on those submissions. Members of the committee will not be permitted to introduce new criteria into their questions. Then I will invite the ward member to speak. He will also have 5 minutes to present their case. Committee members may then, on conclusion of that presentation, ask questions of clarification. The committee members may then have the opportunity to ask questions of clarification of the officer's presentation. and then the committee will debate the application and vote on the decision. So that is the process that we are going to be working to tonight. Everybody attending this evening quite happy and understand how it's going to go and when you'll be asked to come up to the lectern to speak. So we'll take the first application this evening, which is the Sterling Gardens Hector's Way, and this is to consider a new link road connecting Hector's Way to King's Road through the Sterling Estate development with associated retaining walls. And this has come to committee by a member's calling. So, Mr. Masawa, if you would very kindly present this application to committee this evening. Thank you.
Chairman, I'm just going to attempt to share my screen. So if members could bear with me for a second. Okay. Just bear with me. I just need to get rid of this window.
Sorry, Chairman, I'm going to have to reboot as well because it's just crashed.
I need this gone. That will do. Oh. No. Right, okay, thank you. Okay. Right, are we ready to proceed?
Sorry, it seems disappeared on my screen. I put the desktop and silent screen share radio. We can flash across.
I will allow the presentation to continue.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can everyone hear me? I'm sure they can. Good evening, everyone. The first item on the agenda is the full planning application at Sterling Gardens, which is for a new link road connecting Hector's Way to King's Road as part of the Sterling Estate development. We do have an update sheet which includes additional information of clarity to the published report and following the committee members' site visit and the committee chairman's briefing. During the committee site visit, members asked for confirmation as to why the new link road has to be constructed at raised levels. And also why it can't be constructed at the original levels. We've included a response in the update sheet. The reason is that the original building is also built not in accordance with the original levels, such that if the link road was constructed at the original levels, there will be inadequate level access for those with mobility, impaired mobility. In addition, the raised levels will positively reduce the gradient of the road, which will assist pedestrians and cyclists in terms of using the link roads, and also reduce spoil. At the same committee site visit, members also asked for confirmation of the width for the link roads. In the update sheet, it confirms the width as a minimum of 6.1 meters. The next point was a question from the residents from King's Road, who asked why there was no formal pedestrian crossing along the link road. The highway officers have responded, that's included in the update sheet as well. But the reason is that due to the proximity of the junctions, as well as the footway widths along the roads, it's impossible to construct a formal crossing. However, as indicated at the site visit, there will be a dropped curb informal crossing of the link roads to the proposed building. There was also a question from residents regarding the weight limit for the HGV vehicles using the link roads. The highway officers have confirmed that there is no weight restriction on the new link roads. This is consistent with the no weight restriction arrangement for Mill Lane. As members may be aware, the objective of the link road is to divert traffic from Mill Lane. So Mill Lane doesn't have any weight restrictions. However, the highway officers have confirmed that the road will be subject to the standard highway restrictions, which is currently 44 tons. Members also pointed about attaching a condition which would restrict the two-way traffic from Boundary Road towards the King's Road new roundabout, effectively making it a one-way street. Unfortunately, the proposed new link road is to provide diverted traffic from Mill Lane and King's Road westbound. As such, members are reminded that the application before them is for a two-way new link road, which is consistent with the original planning permission from 2015. This is also as recommended by West Berkshire Highway Authority in terms of the council's future aspirations for the local highway network. And the last point raised by members at the site visit was with regards to the traffic signal junction at King's Road, Umbridge Road, and Boundary Road, Crossroads. I think members were keen to have confirmation as to the reason why the traffic signals have now been removed from the scheme. The reason is that the signals have been removed because of the increase in costs. As indicated in the update sheet, the developer has outlined that the signals were originally estimated at 250,000, but the costs have increased and the likely cost is in excess of 1 million. Highway officers have also commented on the concerns regarding the loss of residence parking on King's Roads. This is a consideration that officers are making as part of a separate non-material amendment, which is concerned with the building. It's the council's aim that residents will be allowed to park within the development. And with that, members may be aware that in 2015, there was no condition requiring for the provision of replacement parking for King's Road residents. But officers are happy to take the approach of attaching the condition this time round as part of the non-material amendment. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will start the presentation. Next time. Right. Members, the application before you today is full planning permission as indicated for the new link road connecting Hector's Way and King's Road through the Sterling Estate development. Objections were received from Newbury Town Council as outlined in the report. There are no objections from other statutory or technical consultees, and conditions are recommended within the report and the update sheet. The application was called in by the ward member to ensure committee members assess the new link roads in terms of its wider implications to the residents locally. A summary of the representations received are also included as section 4 of the report. Members, the officer recommendation is one for approval, subject to conditions which are listed within the report, the amended conditions within the update sheet, and the heads of terms for the legal agreement are also included within the report. The site is located on the southeastern edge of Newbury Town Centre, on the junction of King's Road and Boundary Roads. On your screen is the original planning application for the Sterling Estate residential development. As indicated in the report, planning permission was granted by the Western Area Planning Committee in 2015 on the 18th of March. The application was subsequently referred to the District Planning Committee, where it was approved on the 25th of March. The application had been referred to the District Planning Committee as the proposed residential development was within a protected employment area, and policy CS9 of the core strategy refers on that matter. Just as a background, the approved development is for 167 flats, car parking, the new link road, which you can see on the screen, which indicates the road as similar to that proposed. Next one. Next, please. Next, please. I'll just continue, Mr. Chairman. The details of the proposed developments are listed at section 1 of the committee report. Let me try and share. So this is another plan of the link roads on the original planning application in 2015. As members can see, it's a two-way link road. Again, we've got the proposed junction mini roundabout and the one to the south as well. The current application, as shown on the above plan, shows the same link road as previously approved. And the only significant difference as indicated is the levels in terms of the height, which I'll point out in a minute. But also because of the raised levels, there's now a requirement for a retaining wall, which is located in this section here, if you follow my cursor. And the retaining wall has been agreed in consultation with Network Rail. And this is to prevent vehicle incursion onto the railway. As seen on the next slide, as a result of the changes to the proposed ground levels during construction of the building, the link road will be raised by up to 1 meter in places. As you can see on the plan, the dashed elements is the existing ground level, and the solid line is the proposed ground level. So the height from existing to proposed does vary in places, but the maximum is a meter. As indicated, to prevent vehicle incursion, a retaining wall is proposed. Just behind the retaining wall is a 2 meter wide maintenance access, which is the orange hatched area, which will provide access for the Highway Authority to inspect and maintain the retaining wall. There is also the addition of the loading bay, which is here, which is for refuse collection. We've got the bin storage in this location. The proposal is accompanied with provision of an acoustic barrier fence to the south of Gordon Road. Gordon Road is here, and the proposed acoustic barrier fence is in this location. As indicated earlier, there is no formal pedestrian crossing along the link road, but there are dropped curbs in this location, as referenced previously. It is proposed that the link road, the footpaths, the retaining wall, acoustic barrier, they will all be adapted by the Highway Authority, by the council, under Section 38 of the Highways Act. The next plan shows the improvements to Kings Road and Boundary Road in terms of road markings, the provision of a new zebra crossing, and the roundabout. These provisions will be secured by Section 278 legal agreement under the Highway Act. As indicated, the link road retaining wall and all infrastructure will be maintained by the council's highway department. The developer has confirmed in writing that they will arrange for the relevant permits agreements with Network Rail for access for the retaining wall. And these provisions are listed in the heads of terms within the report, and they'll be subject of a legal agreement if the application is approved this evening. This plan just shows the retaining wall in a little bit more detail. It will have a height of approximately 1.4 meters, and above it will have a 1.8 meter palisade fence. The next slide just shows the acoustic barrier fence in terms of the type and appearance. And this is proposed to protect the amenity of the Gordon Road residents. The next slide just shows the drainage for the proposed link road. It includes surface drainage pipes in blue, manholes, and a surface water infiltration trench, which is located in this location. The local lead flood authority has no objection. I think flooding was one of the points raised in representations, but the flood authority have no objection, and there are conditions listed within the committee report, an additional requirement in the update sheet this evening. The next slide is just to illustrate the vehicle movements in terms of the swept paths. As can be indicated, it's a two-way system, and this is for the link road. And it's the same swept paths, just illustrating vehicle movements in terms of the Kings Road and Boundary Road improvements. I'll just quickly go through some site photographs, Mr. Chairman, before I end the presentation. This photo shows the current access into the development from Apprentice Way, and gives an indication of what the link road will look like. The next photo shows the current access, again, from Apprentice Way looking east. It also shows the embankment onto Gordon Road, which is up here. And this is the location of the acoustic barrier fence once it's installed. And we can see the phase 1 building, which is under construction. This photo is showing the residential building under construction taken from Boundary Road Rail Bridge looking north. The next photo shows the location of the proposed retaining wall. It's in this location. And the photo is taken from Railway Road looking north, and it shows the gradient going north towards Kings Road. Again, just to illustrate where the retaining wall will be. The next photo just shows the location of the retaining wall in relation to the building itself, and the road would be more or less in line with the van. Photo showing the existing layout on Boundary Roads with the proposed zebra crossing approximately halfway along the roads. And this is the Kings Road, Boundary Road and Umbridge Road junction. As indicated on the original application in 2015, there was a proposal for a traffic signal junction, and this has now been omitted from the scheme. The zebra crossing at the public house is being retained. And this photo is taken from Kings Road along the looking south. And this is the location of the proposed new mini roundabout and access road. Mr. Chairman, as outlined to members at section 1 of the report, the 2015 full planning application was approved by the District Planning Committee, and the planning permission includes the provision of a new link road. The principle of the new link road is therefore well established by the approved planning permission in 2015. Officers consider that the identified need for adequate access provisions for the Sterling Cables residential development and the wider highway network as benefits weighs significantly in favor of the proposal and renders it appropriate in the context of policy ADPP1, special strategy ADPP2, Newbie. In addition, policy CS5, infrastructure development, states that the council will work with infrastructure providers and stakeholders to identify requirements for improving and promoting opportunities for healthy and safe travel, and demonstrate good access to key services and facilities. The same policy also emphasizes the importance of road safety. Mr. Chairman and members, officers therefore recommend that the application is approved, subject to the schedule of conditions within the report and the update sheet. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Massawa, for your presentation this evening. Members, I now invite Mr. Goddard on his presentation regarding the highways issues on this application.
Thank you, Chairman. My apologies, my IT is not working tonight, so I'm going to be Massey for a little while. Massey Masari has given you a lot of detail on this proposal tonight and what the planning application is about, and I'm not intending to go through all that again for you, but I am going to focus on certain areas that I hope will then remove any confusion that anyone may have regarding what is before you. The highways report is part of the report is found on page 53 of the main report with the pink cover. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you to the update report, which I think sets out, while you're here tonight, somewhat more clearer. So there is much history to this site, much history regarding the link road that passes through it and is proposed to pass through it. This link road is covered by policies in the council's local plan, saved policies 2007 under policy Trans 1A. And in fact, part of the link road was built some 25 years ago or so when Sainsbury's was built. You will see part of it that was built that goes past where the Mole Country Stores is. So the development of this site was always reliant on the provision of this link road through the site as shown on the screen up there before you. There are some significant benefits to providing this link road that were debated and agreed over the course of some 3 decades. And I thought it was worth, at the bottom of the update sheet, to remind members of what those benefits were. There are 4 main points there. The first being is that it reduces traffic on King's Road and the Mill Lane to the north, roads that are not really suitable as the years have gone on for catering for the level of traffic that has now been placed upon them. With the traffic removed or reduced from those roads, we can make them into quieter residential streets, to the huge benefit of most of the residents that live there. And we can make them active travel routes. And this then moves me on to my second point. It's enabled the provision of pedestrian and cycle facilities to connect this part of Newbury, where such facilities historically and are currently very poor, narrow footways, congested roads, etc. And this is particularly important now with the Newbury Racecourse development to the southeast of us. It would also reduce traffic on the A339 B3421 roundabout by Sainsbury's. Because at the moment, when you come out of Sainsbury's, you have to turn left if you want to go towards Thatcham and go all the way around about and then go via Mill Lane. With this proposal, you can turn right and use this link road, and it reduces traffic on that big roundabout, which is always a plus. There is an economic benefit here. This would be a major route to connect the industrial and commercial areas to the east of this area in Hambridge Lane, and provide a direct link for traffic, and including HGVs to go straight onto the town centre, the A339 and the A34 beyond. So there were many significant benefits here which were considered and agreed some time ago. The overall design of the road through the site was agreed with the previous planning application in 2015. So the principle of this road, the overall two-way nature of this road, the layout of this road has already been approved. My advice to you tonight is to focus on what changes are taking place from the original 2015 design to what is before you now. And what I've sought to do is to tabulate those changes in 4 main areas on page 3 of 10 of the update report. And I will spend, if I may, just a few moments going through them. So there's 4 main changes. The first change is a reduction in some of the road widths, particularly the east to west section that runs almost along parallel with the railway line. It's been reduced quite particular there from 7.3 to 6.1. But as in the reasoning and the amelioration in the columns next to it, which tells you why we're having to do this and what we as highway officers have done to try and limit any disadvantages and make use of advantages, is that by reducing the width of that road, it reduces the size and extent of the retaining wall structure between this road and the embankment that goes up to Gordon Road. In fairness, the rest of Hambridge Road is already at about six meters wide, so it's not providing a road that's any narrower than what is pretty much already there. And the rest of the link road, particularly the bit between the site that goes north to south, was already 6.1 as well. So there is a consistency there with regards to road widths. The second point is that the footway on the southern side where the infiltration trench is shown on the drawing in the screen has had to be deleted in order to provide this infiltration trench. Now, this is because it's been difficult to provide drainage and connect drainage to the rest of the drainage network from this site due to levels. The site has had to be drained somehow, but we have retained a 2 metre wide footway in the northern side, and we have ensured that there's crossing points in good places to make sure that this development is connected to that footway going on towards Sainsbury's. And it will also provide a bit of greenery, a bit of green verge around this trench itself. The site, the third point, the site has been, particularly where the main phase 1 building is, the road and the site levels have been raised by 1 metre in places. This was unfortunately an authorised development, but it did have an advantage of reducing the amount of spoil that was taken off the site. And it has reduced the gradient, that north to south bit, going down towards the railway line. To compensate for that, we've had to provide the retaining wall structure on the southern side that Mr. Masari was talking about a few moments ago. The biggest change, the final change, is the deletion of the proposed traffic signals at the Crossroads by the London Apprentice Public House. This scheme was originally estimated at about 250,000. But unfortunately, since then, it has become apparent the sheer extent of the amount of services, cables, pipes around that Crossroads that was so congested that we couldn't even put poles for signals in it. To have that all moved is estimated to have cost £1 million, almost, with BT fibre optics probably covering about half that cost. The sheer cost has unfortunately become prohibitive. So we've had to scale back the design as shown on the screen for you. But the traffic modelling that we did in that exercise didn't show much change with keeping the Crossroads as is and the expanded traffic signal junction that was previously proposed. The zebra crossing is still being retained fronting the pub, and there are still further crossings being provided, and there are still footways on the southwestern corner of the Crossroads that aren't there now. Chairman, this has been a difficult site to work with. It's long known that it's been contaminated, or was contaminated. It was one of the most contaminated sites in the south of England, if not all of England. And the costs in developing it have always been very challenging. And it's also constrained too. The railway line to the south, the roads around it, the levels, the drainage. And so there has been a lot of difficulties which have meant that unfortunately, we've not been able to keep to the original design. But your highway officers have kept to it as much as possible. You still have the road going through the site, serving its original purpose. But we have had to make compromises in order to get it all built. as per the 4 changes that I've just mentioned. I also feel as highway officers that all too frequently, we've not really had much choice in making the decisions that we had and we're now presenting to you tonight. For instance, let me give you a couple of examples. Item 2, the deletion of the footway where the infiltration trench is. Somehow we've had to drain the site, otherwise it'll flood. The raising of the road levels. Some people have raised concerns and the site levels in general. But we can't do anything about that now, unfortunately, unless we demolish all that's been built and dig it out. I hear that people are disappointed in some ways that the traffic signal junction has been deleted. But neither us nor the developer have simply got nearly £1 million in order to be able to provide it. It's unfortunate, but I think as highway officers, we've done everything we can to keep the scheme as intact as possible. On to some better points at the top of page 4, the works to widen Boundary Road with the new widened railway bridge and the footway on the eastern side with the provision of the zebra crossing are still proceeding as planned. Following completion of this link road and the site, the council would then need to consider future plans for Kings Road and Mill Lane to the north. Now, this is a focus of much queries by residents, and I would like to assure them that we're not there yet. We, as a council, along with you in full consultation, will need to decide the future of those roads, and in time we will produce plans and ideas that we will consult with you accordingly. Massey has gone through all the questions there on page of 4 of 10, which I do not need to repeat again. He also mentioned that parking issues, the loss of parking on Kings Road has often been raised as quite a legitimate concern by residents. Again, I would reiterate that is a matter that is being considered with the building planning application. That's the non-MAT that's currently being considered. And I think that concludes my presentation, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Goddard. And I know there were concerns following the site meeting, of which I think members will agree some of that has been answered with that presentation this evening. Members, we now move on to the presentations from our attendees. And as I mentioned earlier, first up is our Town Council. I'm very pleased to see this evening with us again, Councillor Nigel Foote. Councillor Foote, do come up to the lectern. Now, you are quite aware of the process. And I will just remind you, you have 5 minutes. At 4, I will say 1 minute, and then with 10 seconds, I will say in conclusion. And if you would just draw, and I'm sure with the previous experience you've got, you're going to be almost to the second with your 5 minutes. So when you're ready, I will start the clock.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And I don't intend being very long, but if I may, I'd like to start by just reading out the findings of the Newbury Town Council Planning and Highways Committee of the 28th of March, when we last looked at this. And I'll read to you the comments. Newbury Town Council would like to see this application brought to the Western Area Planning Committee for their consideration, which is obviously happening tonight. In addition, concerns were raised about the effect on parking, on highways, and on flooding issues. Also, part of the justification for the application originally was to close Kings Road to through traffic. Therefore, this also should be considered. Now, as you've said, Mr. Chairman, a lot of the issues that have been raised have been addressed by Mr. Goddard. One thing that we're very clear on at the Town Council is the concerns we have for the residents of Kings Road, particularly up towards the Boundary Road end. And I would like to remind the committee that these residents had a period of about a year where they more or less had to shut their windows the whole time while that site was decontaminated. and they've had to put up with a lot. And I think we as a town council would really like every effort to be made to look after the concerns of those residents and pay attention to them. So thank you. That's all I wanted to say, but I'd be very happy to answer any questions any members may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Members, have you any questions of Councillor Foote? Yeah, Councillor.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Councillor Foote. You've mentioned that we should look after the residents because of what they've been through before. What kind of things would you have in mind as a town council? What do you think practically should be done on that road?
Well, I think one of the things that is of concern is traffic flow. And I think Mr. Musewa and Mr. Goddard have obviously explained some of the outlines that the outline proposals that you have. I think it would be up for this committee to look at ways of maximising the traffic flow. It is massively disappointing, I think, that the traffic light junction has gone. It's staggering to think of the increased cost, but obviously we are where we are with that. I think road safety considerations are very, very important, and I think traffic signals are without doubt the best way to stop traffic. I think the passage of HGV vehicles is also a concern. And again, I think it was significant, Mr. Goddard's comment right at the end, that it is a difficult site to work with. But again, HGV vehicles passing houses that are very close to that road is a massive concern. And I think the final thing I would like to address is flooding. The drainage ditch at the sort of southern end of the site is there for a reason, but it was mentioned that removal of water, particularly surface water in torrential downpours, is a problem there because of the fact that it's down in a dip. And I think flooding issues are an issue that we as a town council are very concerned with, and we would like every effort made to mitigate any problems with that. That's answered.
Members, any more questions? Councillor Abbs.
Yeah, thank you. I wonder if, obviously safety, I'm sure is going to come up time and time again here. So in terms of crossings, did the Newbie Town Council come up with any actual proposals rather than the drop curbs? Did you manage to?
To my knowledge, no, we didn't. And I would remind you that we did want this application brought before Western Area Planning, because I think it was felt that we needed the benefit of the officers' suggestions on that front. So no, we made no suggestions ourselves.
Okay, thank you very much.
Looking around the room, no more questions. Thank you very much, Councillor.
Thank you.
Members will now come on to the objectors this evening, and we have Mrs. Nicola Blythe. Mrs. Blythe, in fact, you're here this evening. I've got you down appearing on Zoom, but nice to see you in person. Now, you heard the my little mention as to how this will go. You've got 5 minutes. I'll give you 1 minute notice and then 20 seconds. I guess you know where you are within your presentation.
Hopefully,
time.
Yes. Well, let's see.
Okay. So when you're ready.
A lot of things I've going to mention have been highlighted, but nevertheless, so thank you for listening.
Thank you.
The first item I'd like to raise is the Planning Committee's statement that securing a good standard of amenity for all existing and future occupants of land and buildings is one of the core planning principles of the framework. And although that's laudable, it doesn't appear to include the existing residents of 132 to 148 Kings Road. Indeed, Gordon Road, to whom the impact of the new development in Link Road is negligible compared to the affected Kings Road residents, have been given substantial consideration in the committee's report. So they are not inconvenienced by noise. There will be provision of an acoustic barrier fence south of Gordon Road. The proposed acoustic fence and retaining wall are both located a sufficient distance away, so there will be no adverse impact on daylight and sunlight on residential amenities of Gordon Road. I want to know what similar proposals are being made for the affected residents of Kings Road, both in terms of noise and already adverse impacts on daylight and sunlight on our residences. Due to the Stirling development being, to my knowledge, at least a metre higher than originally planned and at variance in outlook with the original plans, I've personally and my neighbours have at least 6 apartments with a clear range of vision from patio doors and balconies straight into our bedrooms. The distance is certainly less than the requisite 21 metres. It's around 15 metres at most. And by extension, they can see into our living rooms and our gardens. And I just find this quite disturbing and intrusive. And I'm sure you'll agree that it's not in keeping with the securement of a good standard of amenity for existing members of land and buildings. I'm awaiting a response for development and regulation on this, but I'm more than happy for anyone to come and look into it, because you can look into it from my bedroom window. To return to the noise created by the link road, as you're aware, as it says in the report, the Environmental Health Officer has proposed that overall, the impact on neighbouring amenity from the proposed development is considered minimal and will not have a materially harmful impact on nearby residents. And yet the same Environmental Health Officer also considers that the proposed glazing, balcony balustrades and vent schemes for each type of room in each block of flats will protect future occupiers from any noise from the proposed link road. In addition, the proposed acoustic noise barrier will be effective in protecting the existing residential amenity along Gordon Road. I'm sure I don't have to spell out the inconsistency here. And that the residents of Kings Road have been ignored when it comes to the core planning principles of the framework. Finally, the report states, and I'm repeating what's previously been said, the purpose of the link road through the site is to reduce traffic along most of Kings Road and Mill Lane, because these roads are increasingly considered to be unsuitable for the current volumes and types of traffic. And with the link road, these could be made into quieter residential streets. That's great, but it's not, that's apart from the 30+ residents of Kings Road whose health and safety will be affected. So in summary, I think it bears repeating, we have loss of permit controlled parking spaces without consultation or alternative provision thus far. We have concerns with regard to the use of the affected road by HGVs and lorries, because the report states the link road will be an improvement for HGV access to the industrial estate, as there is a restriction on Mill Lane, no doubt for noise pollution and safety reasons. We're concerned about the increased number of children, pedestrians, cyclists sharing the same space, impacting all of us on such a narrow pavement. And I'm talking about the Kings Road side that I live on. We have safety concerns with regard to the crossing at the Kings Road Boundary Road junction, as has been mentioned several times, because the proposed traffic signal junction is no longer included in the scheme.
You have 1 minute.
Thank you. That's all I need. Because the development bears no relation to plans we were shown, my neighbours and I now have an unexpected and startling invasion of our privacy. But mostly, it's the parity of consideration and provision between residents of Kings Road and Gordon Road. This is wholly absent. So to paraphrase George Orwell, I'm asking, are all residents equal when it comes to a good standard of amenity? Or are some residents more equal than others? Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Mrs. Blythe. Just 1 minute. We might have some questions for you. Members, any questions on that very detailed
Mr. Vickers.
Presentation? Yeah. Okay. Councillor Vickers, thank you.
Thank you. That was an excellent presentation, I must say. Just coming to the point you made about noise. Going back to 1998, I remember people who lived in Speen were sent letters inviting them to claim compensation for the excess noise from the bypass. I don't know, have you looked into that? I mean,
we did some years ago have some correspondence from a firm, but and although noise is a great concern of ours, there's so many others. But thank you for raising that. Yes, we have. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I'll ask our legal officer perhaps what the situation is on our road. That's highway agents, and it might be a different law. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Culver.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you for your presentation this evening. You mentioned about the residents of 132 to 148 Kings Road and about the parking. Are you able to elaborate on that? How many houses are affected? How many cars do you currently have on that bit of road, for example?
Off the top of my head, but we have been told, and we've been told nothing specifically. We've had very little communication, despite the fact that we've asked so many times. So until we get something in writing from whoever's responsible, I can't give you that information. Sorry.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Cole.
Thank you, Chairman. The closure of King's Road to through traffic, if that had been part of this proposal, would that have made a substantial difference to your views?
It would have made a substantial difference because, as I say, at the moment, I don't know how many of you walk down King's Road pavement regularly, but you can only have one person passing at a time. At the moment, what people do, people with pushchairs, people with scooters, just couples, when we walk into the road to let the person pass. Oh, sorry, I'm sorry. Yeah, we have to stand and walk into the road to let people pass, and we do that regularly every single day. If this is two-way, I don't know how people are going to pass.
But it would therefore have increased the number of, dealt with the number of parking spaces that are being lost.
Sorry,
Am I not right in thinking that if the road had been closed off, the issue of number of parking spaces would simply go away because there would be additional parking spaces down there?
We wouldn't lose our parking spaces, and we'd also be able to use that space to, to move away and allow passengers and cyclists and parents to move past.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Barnett.
Chairman, I thought it was the end of the pecking order. Sorry. I think Councillor Abbs.
Yeah, I'll take Abbs.
I can be patient, is all right.
Okay.
Sorry, Councillor Abbs. Through you, Chairman. The questions relating to displaced parking spots. Obviously, you heard the comments being made by Mr. Goddard in relationship to possible parking spots.
Yes, I did. Yes.
That, of course, would not be immediately outside your houses along that section of 132 to 148, which means you will have to cross or
That
would
road.
have to cross that road.
Absolutely.
Would you advocate a appropriate crossing at that particular point? You've heard that.
Well, we would have to, oh, sorry, I keep moving away from this. We would have to, simply because, and I can say this now, we can't even now with it being one way cross that road. And I would like to point out that all your orange notices telling us of different, things that are changing are on the opposite side of the road. You take your life in your hands having to cross that road, even if you actually notice that it's been put up. So yes, it's very difficult to cross that road.
Councillor Abbs.
Thanks very much. And yeah, I have to say, great. See a lot of presentations we don't see often as good as that. So thanks very much. I want to come back to something you said about the plans that you saw don't match what's delivered.
Yeah.
Can you expand on that?
Only in the sense that when we've seen representations of what was happening, I was talking specifically about these 6 flats, these 6 apartments are looking straight into my bedroom window. I would conservatively say if this is my bedroom window, you've got that single road and they're no further than Mr. Hooker Road.
No, I understand that the 15
but when we
21,
saw them, they were, I'd have to bring in my neighbour here. They were further around or at an angle. They weren't looking straight into private residences, is what I'm saying.
So I can just make a note that I'd like to come back to that point with officers if they're prepared for that, please.
I think if we had seen something and we'd noticed that, obviously we would have highlighted it immediately.
Indeed. From a safety perspective, I must admit, I'll just so you know, I cycle and drive this route every day because I live down the other end of Umbridge Lane. So yeah, I know this quite well. And yeah, how often, if you didn't mention it, but hopefully you'll bear with me, how often has that junction been dug up in the last 5 years, do you think? Have you got a rough idea?
Again, I'm going to have to go to my neighbours here.
Have you got enough fingers to count on?
It's a lot, right?
It is an awful lot.
It's a lot.
It's an awful lot.
So we'll come back to that again later, I think, Chairman. But I'm really concerned. I mean, to knock it all down and start again might be a bit of a stretch. So have you any suggestions that you might want to make in terms of where a good zebra crossing might go that would help you?
I think that would be a matter for sitting down and consulting with more than just myself, because
I just thought you might.
I'm a single woman, but my neighbours have young children. There's elderly people, so we would all have different perspectives, and so I think it's more worthwhile.
No, I'll just say thanks again for the presentation.
Thank you.
Councillor Doherty.
Thank you for your presentation. Just a point of clarification, actually, I'm a little bit confused. You said if you step into that road or try to cross that road, you take your life into your own hands. Which road, sorry?
Oh, sorry. So from outside Kings Road. So
Can you speak into your microphone?
Sorry.
So Kings Road.
Kings Road, yes. I'm at 146 Kings Road. I'm directly opposite the Sterling development. So yes, and there is no pavement on the other side.
No, I think what was confusing me, because you said that to cross on that road, you step into the road.
Well, what I'm saying is the traffic is significant. So you have to wait for a break in the traffic, is what I'm saying. There's no crossing there. And if you have to get to the other side, there's no pavement on the other side. So you've got lorries whizzing past you. I think I was making the point of planning applications always being posted on the opposite side of the road. If you wish to see them,
okay.
That's what you would have to do.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rolls.
Thank you, and thank you for your presentation. It's just a question regarding the acoustic fence that you mentioned in Gordon Road. How do you envisage, or do you have any thoughts on?
I don't know. I think what I'm most concerned about is that there is a disparity between how their concerns have been addressed, and as you know,
so more consultation point around various issues,
and also the noise, the lack of sunlight, the lack of daylight. That we've experienced is, far more significant than anything Gordon Road. And I'm not disrespecting Gordon Road residents. Good luck to them for getting what they can, but nobody's consulted with us, and we're impacted far more severely.
Thank you.
You've got no more questions. The reason we pulled you back to the microphone is this is going out on YouTube, and if we don't hear it in the microphone, then it doesn't go out on the transmission. So, but you've had a lot of indication tonight how well your presentation has been received, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
Members, we now go on to our supporters. There are none this evening, or no agent or applicant has put in a request to speak to us tonight. So we now move on to our ward member, Councillor Barnett. Please.
Okay, Chairman, members of the public. You've already heard tonight that there's obviously a great concern about the amount of traffic down Kings Road in particular, and members that were found their time to actually attend the meeting on Monday morning found it very difficult crossing the road, even with one stream of traffic from one direction. The movement of vehicles, whether cars, vans, noisy motorcycles or heavy goods vehicles travelling to and from Newbury Town from the east, i.e. Hammeridge Road, Industrial Estate or Thatcham, has been an issue for residents of Mill Lane, Kings Road, Boundary Road and Queen's Road along the surrounding roads for many years. It's been exacerbated by the addition of extra vehicles due to the continuing adaptation of offices and industrial units into flats and apartments. There seems to be no end to that scenario. With the opening of the new road, subject of course to the agreement of members tonight, funneling traffic along the road could reduce noisy HGVs, speeding vehicles along Mill Lane, Boundary Road and Queen's Road, which already have 20-mile-an-hour restriction limits, but very rarely kept to. It will be helping the quality of life for those residents, but it becomes a challenge for us all. And this is what I want to address tonight. You've already heard one particular road is going to benefit, and that's the Gordon Road residents. And that's probably one of the reasons why we as members have not been confronted by those residents, because they probably realise that they're going to benefit from this particular road. But of course, this issue of Kings Road is the major issue, and that is what about the effect of all the residents in the section of 132 to 50, 1448 or 150 along that stretch. It will be a major issue, I think, for those. You've heard the comments by the objector tonight, and that, of course, is going to affect those particular residents in particular. Having said that, I think we need to look at some of these other issues as well, and that is this issue of the possibility of the other section of the Kings Road becoming a cul-de-sac. I think that does need to be seriously considered, and it does need to be, I think, part of a condition. There is a considerable amount of parking along that stretch already within the residents' parking scheme, but there's also sections along that road that don't have any restriction at all. And I think that needs to be restricted to alleviate the possibility of people that won't be able to park, that have residents parking vouchers, but of course will not be able to park. The issue in relationship to this Umbridge Road, Boundary Road, Crossroads, which you've heard already tonight about the cost implications, because of course the major services under that particular crossroads, I think also is a major issue that really needs to be addressed. To allow vehicles coming out of Boundary Road North and Boundary Road South being confronted with looking at traffic both directions without any signals, without any lights, is going to be a major headache, especially at particular times of the day, like the early morning and late afternoon. You're
1
just
minute.
like, right, okay. I'm obviously going to get nowhere near the end anyway, but don't worry. But that is a major issue that I think will have to be addressed. It's been addressed in other areas. Staggered lights. Why not the crossings that's already been mentioned? And I think there needs to be more crossings, pedestrian crossings. Why can't they be with lights? So at least it will give the opportunity for movement of traffic from the areas that I've mentioned, because I think those two particular areas will actually create more and more traffic problems. So at the end of the day, I think we have got to, as members, look very much at these residents that are being drastically affected by noise, by extra vehicles, by lack of parking, because at the end of the day, we can't throw out the baby with the bathwater.
Thank you, Councillor. Just 1 minute, please. Members, any questions of Councillor? Any questions? Yes, we have. Councillor Abs.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Councillor. I'm just wondering, obviously, safety is a huge concern for us all. Did you have any thoughts yourself on how to install? I mean, other than it sounds like you were pushing for the traffic lights to come back, but assuming that can't happen, did you have any other thoughts about where a zebra crossing or two might go?
Well, there's already one by the London Apprentice, which is frequently used by residents that come down Boundary Road South to either continue on down Boundary Road North or turn right and, of course, carry on down towards Arnhem Road or Umbridge Road. And that I think should remain. But why can't that be an area where there's a set of staggered lights away from the junction? That would alleviate, that would at least restrict vehicles that would have free movement coming from east to west, and give the opportunity for traffic coming from Boundary Road North actually access onto the junction, or in this case, they're going to be allowed to turn right. Whereas, of course, sorry, they're going to be able to turn right, but they are not going to just be joining traffic, which is coming along Umbridge Road. They can also be looking right, because there's going to be traffic coming the other way along Kings Road.
So do I interpret what you're telling me is that you think there are options that have just not been explored yet?
I think you're correct. I think there's a lot of options. And I mean, that's just one area. The other one I think we need to seriously consider is the issue of the other section of Kings Road in relationship to a cul-de-sac or a restricted area, and even consider parking for possibly the displaced parking, which at the moment we haven't heard exactly the number, but I'm led to believe it's roughly about 10 or 12 parking spots. But I think it's about 20 residents coupons. I suspect that's a figure. Is that correct? 20? Yeah, 20, I think. Yeah. So you know, we do need to look at that, and bearing in mind, of course, some of those residents have got small children. So wherever they're going to park, they've got to get their children back to their house.
Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you. Councillor Vickers, please.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, you just talked about parking again. Have you yourself got any ideas what the solution might be? Because if you go west down Kings Road, you will have relatively traffic-free section. Is there any chance, do you think, of providing the parking that's not there, either in the phase 2 section of the development site or further west down the end of Kings Road? I mean, that's not ideal, but if, as you say, there are more permits than there are spaces, we need to provide spaces. And to my mind, for safety reasons, to avoid having people from this section of Kings Road crossing the road, they should be further west. You must have given that some thought.
Yeah, I mean, Councillor Vickers, if you look at the houses further on the two-way section, parallel with Sainsbury's supermarket, there's 12 parking spots along there, which is unrestricted. And I'm addressing that point to Mr. Gollard, because it has been pointed out to me. 12 parking spots there, I would have thought could easily well been used by the residents that have already got coupons along the single section very close to the traffic lights leading into Hector's Way, which will then free up a few places for the perhaps displaced parking very close to 132. So it would mean that they wouldn't have so far to go. I mean, that would be one option, but I would still also feel that they're justified in trying to get or achieve the parking within the complex of this new development.
No more questions, thank you. Members, that stimulated quite a bit of thought, and this is your opportunity to clear them up maybe with our questions with our officers. So anybody, any questions of clarification of Mr. Masawi? Councillor Abbs.
Thanks. Yeah, I'd like to get some clarification on this whole business. I'm sure I heard, I can't remember if it's Mr. Goddard or Mr. Massey, but either someone say that it had been agreed that parking was going to be made available within the development as an offset of what had happened. Did I mishear, or did someone misspeak, or what?
Mr. Masawi.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Councillor Abbs. No, the parking has not been agreed as yet. In the update sheet, as well as in the committee report, it is stated that it has always been the aim for the council that the residents that are being displaced are parked within the proposed new development, but that hasn't been agreed as yet. I will point out that in 2015, on the original planning application, this matter was considered, and members resolved to attach an informative on the decision. I think, as indicated in the presentation, officers, due to the difficulties in trying to make provision for the replacement parking, consider that we see it feasible to attach a condition to a non-material amendment, which is currently being considered for the building. The condition could have been considered as part of this application, but unfortunately, the red line doesn't give any room to make provision for any replacement parking for the Kings Road residents. So that's the solution that we've considered. But to answer the question, it hasn't been agreed.
But you're working on it.
That's correct.
Okay, so that is well within the red line. I have a load of questions, Chairman, but I can see another 4 or 5 hands up as well. So I'm just like one more before I pass the baton over to others so we have a change of voice. I would like to understand this whole business of not being able to provide a safe crossing from the south to the north. And I point specifically to the diagrams that clearly show a new path that is on the north side of the development. So that will be adopted to a standard width. I think 2 meters has been mentioned quite often. And then if I look at 25 meters down from the crossing, which is basically the same distance as the crossing at the Apprentice, I see a piece of blank land which has got some scrub on it. So a landing zone on the other side of the road for a crossing. Why is it not possible to put a crossing there? Please.
Mr. Goddard.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman. I'm happy to answer this question now, even though questions were, I understand, for Mr. Massari.
So I thought it might be more suitable.
Yeah,
I'm happy for Mr. Massari, but it's an issue maybe you better answer at this stage.
Chairman, we've looked into this. The provision of traffic signals there or a zebra crossing there. And unfortunately, when providing such things, there needs to be a clear visibility for pedestrians, for a pedestrian crossing, for vehicles to have time to stop. And what you have there is obviously that section of road is between 2 junctions, including the roundabout just to the west there. And so we are concerned about potential visibility of vehicles being able to see a signal crossing or a zebra crossing on what is a very short section of road. However, what we can provide, because let's be honest, pedestrians will cross there anyway to go north and south along Boundary Road. Now, there is, yes, a zebra crossing just to the east, fronting the pub that's being retained. And if you look at the plan, it's on slide 11, Massey. If you
would it be helpful to put that up? Because I'm sure those who know
well.
this area are a bit confused. They don't know, they're a bit confused. But if we could put that one up, please.
Slide 11. That's the one. That's the one. That's it.
And is it possible with your cursor to point this out, or do we just have to sort of?
So if I go over some of these points again.
Yeah, good.
There's the existing zebra crossing that's going to be retained. If you see here, there are crossings that consist of drop curbs and tactile pavers on the Boundary Road arms. And while they're not formal like a zebra crossing or a signal crossing, I think let's accept that some pedestrians are going to go up along this side. Perhaps some drop curbs and tactile pavings across there. It's a relatively minor change that I think can be easily accommodated. And I would suggest that that is a way forward. For reasons I previously explained, because of this distance here, it's difficult to provide a set of signals. I'm not even sure that signals would have enough pedestrian flows to meet the requirements for such a crossing, nor a zebra crossing, but that zebra crossing was there historically. I would suggest that's a way forward, and I think that could be easily accommodated if members see fit.
I would like that, but I'm still looking at that diagram. I'm glad to put it on the screen because if I know it's an old one that's on the right there, but
we'll bring this up in the discussion. I think if you don't mind.
I don't mind.
If we could go back, Anybody else any questions on this before I take this down? Councillor Doherty, you might be out of order here as to where you want to speak, but if it's a question on this while it's up, I'll take it, and then Councillor Vickers. I think it's a good idea. So Councillor Doherty.
It is. I'm just trying to get the traffic flow, Mr. Godfrey, because I'm trying to understand why you would turn right out of that junction if you've come down Mill Lane and you're heading out. I know there's flats in there and there's a laundrette and everything. I'm just trying to understand, have you done any traffic modelling about the additional number of cars that would now potentially or be turning right versus those coming, because the natural direction of travel on that road is east to west. East to west, east to west. And when you've come in from the Sainsbury's roundabout and gone down Mill Lane, you're heading out the way rather than coming up there and turning right. I'm aware there's some residential and I'm aware that there's a laundrette and I think automotive places there. So I'm just wondering what traffic modelling work you've done on vehicles turning right, coming out of that junction, because this seems to be the safety concern.
Can I just understand it's traffic turning right from the north going south?
Indicate your cursor.
There's the cursor. No, it's just there somewhere. We've lost it somewhere. There it is.
And the road junction up there, turning right at that road junction there.
There we go.
Where you've got that short angle, there.
That one there, coming out and turning right. Okay, so your concern is, has that been modelled, vehicles turning right?
You can currently turn right out of there, but you don't have to look for vehicles coming from the right. And that's why I'm just interested in what the flow is. I don't think there's any, I'm not aware there's been any issues with that previous, that with people doing that. It's been that way for years, but I'm just wondering if there's been any modelling on that number just to understand how many are doing that are now going to have to be looking to their right.
Yeah. 2 points in response. Firstly, the sight lines do comply to standards. We've assumed a 30-mile-per-hour limit along this road. 43 metres can be achieved. And yes, the design before you, along with the previous traffic signal junction, was extensively modelled using appropriate modelling software, which is why some of the conclusions in the update report there is that the traffic signal junction, which was much bigger than that junction that you've got there, doesn't perform much differently to what you've got now proposed before you. So thank you, we did consider that. In fact, the traffic movements, because there's less traffic going along Mill Lane, should decrease doing that particular manoeuvre. Thank you.
Members, forgive me, but I'm going to ask Councillor Vickers now. It's a question on this subject, and then we'll get back if we...
Very similar, okay. Chairman, because I understood at the Chairman's briefing that the southbound part of Boundary Road north of that junction was going to be left turn only in future because of the narrowing of the exit. But I now see that it's more to do with visibility or
these are
safety.
questions. These are questions.
So the question is, am I right in thinking that the narrowing of that junction where the two, where the pedestrian sort of informal crossing is nothing to do with changing the traffic flows, it's to do with trying to improve safety or visibility?
Mr. Goddard again, I think.
Chairman, that's correct. At the moment, there's two lanes going south there. And because traffic flows are being reduced for the reasons that I set out just now, we can afford to narrow that to one lane. Yes, it does improve visibility. And also for pedestrians walking along that northern footway there, north of Hambridge Road, Kings Road, it provides a shorter crossing point for them, for pedestrians walking along that section of footway there.
Thank you. I'm out of order again, but Councillor Rolls, same area
in terms
of concern.
Of this particular point. Yeah, I just wondered in terms of traffic signals, is that the only option? Obviously, we're getting rid of that proposal, but what other options are there, or are there not any other options? I'm not clear. Thank you.
Chairman, I would argue that the only option with the funding that we have is that option before you.
Thank you.
That's it. I'm
I'll now
afraid.
go back on to the original. Councillor Cole, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm still now on the same thing, in effect. I had intended to ask simply why it is that King's Road cannot be closed off now as part of this exercise. It must be within our gift. That's still in my mind. But I'm now thinking about coming down Boundary Road, as I often do. At the moment, I can nip out of Boundary Road and go to the right, or indeed to the left. That's going to become much more difficult when it is two-way traffic there, which it is not at the moment. I think I'm wanting to see a mini roundabout at that Boundary Road junction, get rid of the other mini roundabout, close off the King's Road at that point, provide the safety.
This is a question. Don't design on the hoof if we can help it, but.
Is this possible?
Chairman, I'll try and design on the hoof. It's all right. What you're proposing there is a four-armed mini roundabout at those crossroads. Unfortunately, four-armed mini roundabouts are never ideal because traffic struggles with which right of way and visibility is always poor. We always try, if you have mini roundabouts, to have three-armed ones, which is what you've got there. One particular example of a very famous four-armed mini roundabout is, of course, at Hermitage, Station Road, Priors Court Road, which has not turned out to be ideal, the local residents will tell you, as an example. Regarding King's Road, this has been mentioned. It is our intention as highway officers to make that a cul-de-sac. That is our plans at the moment, because what would be the point of keeping it open and then keeping it as a rat run for people to avoid going round by the Mole Country stores? That is very much on our agenda, but obviously we haven't drawn any plans up yet because we're still at this stage. But as I mentioned earlier on, we will want to work and consult with all local residents along there in achieving what improvements can be made to make that street a more pleasant place to live going forward.
So that would give residents some comfort then that they would get the safety and the parking back again that way, if I'm reading you correctly. The other bit leaves me very uncomfortable that getting out of Boundary Road is going to become much more difficult.
Thank you. I think that was quite reassuring from Mr. Goddard. Reasonably new information, but obviously out the remit of this application's red line and what have you. But there we are. Councillor Culver.
Thank you, Chairman. I just want to change it slightly and think about the residents from the flats who want to go to Sainsbury's. If they're going to walk along the link road and they haven't got a pavement on the south side now, they've just got one on the north side. And I think at the site visit, we were told there'd be dropped curbs just outside the flats. You could get onto that northern pavement. What happens when people walk along there and they want to get to Sainsbury's? Have we given some consideration to that as well? Have we thought about all of the different journeys that residents might make in order to get from the eastern end of that complex across to the Sainsbury's?
Chairman, I'm once again looking to put a plan on the screen that I hope I can use to answer Councillor Culver's good question. We do regret the loss of this footway on the southern side, but for reasons explained, that the trench has become necessary. So what we've done to make sure that residents from the main building can actually then reach that footway that's being retained on the northern side is that halfway, okay, so again. Yeah. There is a set of drop curbs and tactile pavers that are specifically put in. So people come out of the building, that would be where they would cross. You will see that it's equal distance between the two roundabouts, so visibility should be quite good. And then they can then cross over and use that footway on the northern side of the link road, or they could then route north and use the existing section of King's Road, which, as we've mentioned, would become a quieter and more active travel route. Thank you.
Sorry, Mr. Goddard, but
That's
what would
all right.
happen when people walk along that northern pavement on the link road and then want to go to Sainsbury's? Would they then have to go up and round the loop and use the current crossing into Sainsbury's and then walk all the way back around the petrol station to actually get in? So I'm thinking about the western end of that link road near Mole.
What I would like to do is check the street view and the aerial view. Councillor Abs has got it right in front of me, very helpful, but I can't quite see it from here. And perhaps I could come back and answer that with you in a little while, unless, he's zoomed in a bit.
We'll come back in that in a minute. Okay. I think I'm going to go with Councillor Rolls again, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, could officers comment on the comments made regarding the provisions made along Gordon Road as opposed to those along King's Road? For example, the acoustic fence was raised. It appears to be slight preferences towards Gordon Road, or that's certainly what I was gleaning from the objector. Could I have some comments on that? And just a second question. I wasn't quite clear on the HGV point that Mr. Masawi raised around why there's no restriction. I think it was relating to another road not having that restriction, but could you elaborate on that point as well? Thank you.
Chairman, if I may, it refers in terms of the first question, the considerations Gordon Road versus King's Road. Really, this is a question that relates to the 2015 planning permission. There is no significant difference in terms of the works that have been carried out today and the works that were approved in the 2015 planning permission. So it being the case that that planning permission could be lawfully implemented at any time, albeit that it would involve taking down the existing building and rebuilding exactly as was approved in 2015. There aren't additional measures at this point that we could take in terms of the amenity of residents of King's Road. And the impacts on the amenity of residents of King's Road at the time that the 2015 planning permission was approved were considered to be on balance acceptable by members of the committee who approved it. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you.
I can add, Chairman, to that. Yes, on this current application, Councillor, there is a noise assessment which was carried out in 2018. There were continuous noise surveys that were carried out in 5 different locations around the development. And that includes along King's Road and at Gordon Road as well, and other locations, including beyond the railway. And based on those surveys and the noise levels, they considered that there was more significant noise at Gordon Road in terms of what is existing and what is proposed. I think that's why they recommended the acoustic barrier located at Gordon Road.
Sorry, Chairman, may I just ask a supplemental to that? So those surveys were done in 2018. Is that considered, obviously that seems 4 years ago to me, is that still considered to be relevant to today and we're satisfied with that?
Thank you, Councillor. Yes, the Environmental Health Officer was satisfied with the noise surveys. I will add that the surveys were carried out in response to a condition attached to the original planning permission, which required that they carry out the surveys and recommend mitigations for the development prior to occupation. So it was going to be addressed further down the line in terms of the development itself because of the nature of the condition. And that's why it was carried out in 2018. But yes, Environmental Health Officer was happy with it.
Thank you. Members, I'm now going to go back to Mr Goddard to finalise the answer. I think you're prepared now for Councillor Culver.
Thank you, Councillor Culver. My understanding of the question is if residents walk along that northern footway, along the east to west link near the, I think Massey's put it back up again. That footway does continue all the way on the northern side, and much of it is existing. That's because it's already been built. Now, for pedestrians to go from there, at the moment, going towards Sainsbury's, they would have to go a bit further north to the signalised pedestrian crossing near the existing Kings Road junction. There is no, it doesn't even seem to be a set of drop curbs just north of the roundabout going into Sainsbury's. I think maybe that might be something that we as officers may need to look for going forward, because there's never been a demand for any crossing there just north of the existing roundabout as you go into Sainsbury's. But I think going forward, along with all the rest of the works that we ultimately need to do for Kings Road, perhaps that's something that we should need to look at. I think it's a very good question. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Goddard.
Councillor Abs, I know you're in the waiting room there. I'm just going to ask Councillor Barnett and then Councillor Cant, and I'll come back to you, and then everybody's had one question.
Thanks, Chairman. 2 points, Mr Goddard. The direction of flow of traffic coming off of the Sainsbury's roundabout and also Burger King, that of course is up to now has been traffic that's coming to Kings Road, to Mill Lane or Queen's Road and going east. This will of course be encouraged presumably to use the new road. What signage would be on those roundabouts?
Chairman, I don't think we've considered that yet, but we will need to going forward to, as you say, encourage traffic to use this link road. I think whatever signage is applied to the soon to be probably blocked Kings Road and Mill Lane, we will need to consider going forward with whatever improvements are provided for those sections of roads as originally envisaged.
Thank you. Councillor Kent.
Thanks. Can I just ask another supplementary? It's on the back of Councillor Doherty's in regard when she was trying to ascertain the amount of flow of traffic coming from Boundary Road North. And obviously you've been mentioning, Mr Goddard, in relationship to the restricted access at that junction, the proposal. Don't forget, of course, that is used primarily by emergency vehicles, i.e. the police, particularly, coming out of that junction. And I think that could be an important point in regarding visibility, because at the moment they come out at quite a rate and they're only considering direction of flow in one direction. Bear that in mind.
I would agree, Chairman. Thank you.
Councillor Cant, please.
Thank you, Chair. Very swift point of clarity, Simon, if I may. I'm not sure if I got slightly confused as your explanation. The line of sight between the development and the properties in Kings Road would seem to be intrusive, according to the presentation. Is that because that was granted as part of the original consent in 2015, or are you saying the building was put at an angle that was different from that agreement?
Thank you, Councillor. That's a very good question. So in 2015, a scheme was approved which was essentially on a similar footprint to the current building. It's at the same orientation. The relationship with buildings on Kings Road is the same. Some changes have occurred during construction. In 2020, planning permission was granted for changes to the appearance of external alterations to remove, amongst other things, cladding due to the Grenfell disaster. However, it didn't change the layout of the building. It didn't change the relationship between the building and buildings on Kings Road. Subsequent to that, There were some amendments came to light that had been made during construction while highways were looking at the works that had changed the basement floor height by, I believe I'm correct in saying, approximately 1 metre, which had been accounted for by shaving I think 7.5 centimetres off each floor subsequently. So the basement floor height is different, but the floor height of subsequent floors is minimally different, 7.5 centimetres being approximately that. So in answer to your question, no, the relationships between the buildings haven't changed in any significant manner, and this was considered under the 2015 Planning Commission. So if it was reverted, then the relationship would be exceptionally similar.
Thank you, Councillor Abson. I'll take Councillor Rolls.
Thank you. Chair, it's just the answer to my point about the HGV. I don't believe officers addressed that.
Yep. Okay. We'll come back to that in a minute. Councillor.
Yeah, personally, Councillor Kant kind of asked the question I was going to ask anyway, which is because the lady was very specific about, you know, the distance between those windows that it appears now that we approved, or someone approved. I wasn't a councillor at the time, so it wasn't me.
I will take a bit of advice. Mr. Till, is this relevant to this application, please?
Chairman, we're considering an application that deals with the road layout, so the building relationships aren't really relevant here.
So I'll come back to the other question I had. Is this diagram here? We'll see. It's in brown, and it says this will be adopted. Adoptable asphalt, concrete, etc. But I don't know how much of the road, King's Road, and it's how far out we currently go. It appears to me to be a gap between the adopted area and King's Road that is a question mark in my mind. So is it all adopted or just a bit in brown? In which case, what do we do with the ransom strip?
Officers, who's best qualified for this one?
I will, Chairman.
Well done,
Chairman, I can assure you that all that road will be adopted. Right. I just think that plan you're looking at, I just don't think there's another plan somewhere that continues on from it. But yes, there is no ransom strip. It will all be adopted under Section 38 in the usual way, as it's a new road.
That's what I needed to hear. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rolls. Clarification of your question on the heavy goods.
Point. Yes, thank you.
Again, I can answer that for Councillor Rolls. The point being made earlier on is that currently Mill Lane to the north, there is a weight restriction upon it. So any HGVs coming from the A339 and needing to go to the Hambridge Road commercial industrial areas would then need to go north, round the Robin Hood gyratory, along the A4, all the way to the A4 Hambridge Road junction, nearly on the way to Thatcham, and round that way because of that weight restriction. Whether that happens in practice is unknown. These things are difficult to enforce. But this link road before you, one of the purposes of this link road before you was so HGVs wouldn't have to do that. They would have a quicker route going along the link road and then joining Hambridge Road just to the east. Thank you. I hope that's answered it.
Sorry, can I just have one further question? So in your update sheet, Mr. Goddard, you talk about the widths of the road being reduced. Does that have an impact on HGVs using them?
No, Chairman, because the full swept path drawings have been submitted and they were shown earlier on. We've been very careful about this. Yes, the roads have been narrowed, but there are bends in between the site, going through the site with the mini roundabouts, and we've been very careful to ensure that the largest vehicles can still go around the bends without any difficulty.
Okay, I see Councillor Corbett's back in.
Thank you, Chairman. Just a quick question. Can I clarify the acoustic fence? Is it going at the bottom of the embankment or the top? Because it would strike me that it's not going to be very effective if it's at the bottom.
Thank you, Councillor Carver. Yes, it will be going at the bottom of the embankment, nearest to the road.
So how high is it going to be if it's going to be noise abatement for the people on Gordon Road?
The fence is 2 meters high.
Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Hobbs.
Yeah, I'm afraid I have to ask the supplementary question because on this very subject you've just been raised, it's way more than 2 meters between that road level and the metal fence, isn't it? And we're all there just the other day. It's maybe nearly 5 meters. So it makes no sense whatsoever. All of this assurance of the
question is.
The question is it? Are we absolutely
What is the
sure?
height of the fence?
Has it been put in the wrong place? Is it some kind of mistake? Can we correct it? Any of those?
Mr. Masawi.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Councillor. Yes, the recommendation was made for the acoustic barrier fence in that location from the noise assessment report that was submitted. And as I indicated, our environmental health officer has reviewed the noise report and the recommendation, and they agree with the location and the fence meeting the purpose of protecting the amenity of Gordon Road residents.
Councillor Hobbs, happy?
Well, no, but we'll talk about it in debate.
If you would, please. Members, it's not my role here to steer this committee and to ask any questions, but we've spent an awful lot of time on crossing the roads and acoustic barriers. On the site meeting, one of the big concerns was the height of the road, the change of the topography of the land, and we've not discussed at all the retaining wall. Anybody would like to bring up any of that, considering that was a concern on the site meeting? We're all quite happy with the undulations of the road. Good, as long as we've covered that. And
I think it was addressed by the officer
yeah,
initially.
you were happy with that answer, and it's not stimulated any questions. Okay. Therefore, we have come to the end of the questions of the officers, and now I open this up for debate. And who'd like to start, please? I'm looking at Councillor Hobbs. Well done. Break the ice.
Yeah, no problem. This appears to be an absolutely appalling application in terms of what it will do to residents, and I'm vehemently now against it. I had thought we might be able to mitigate the odd bit here and there, but I don't see any sympathy whatsoever for the residents. And residents 132 to 148 have been mentioned, but I can see the problem going a lot further down the street. And I would have hoped that somebody would have come along, even as part of this, and offered them some kind of double glazing or something to try and mitigate what will be an extremely noisy area. I'm absolutely shocked at the removal of the traffic light system, because I cannot see in an emergency situation, and it's been rightly pointed out that when the police start coming out with the blue lights flashing and go out of Boundary Road North into Kings Road, bang. It's just an accident waiting to happen. Now we can add in all sorts of other stuff. I haven't mentioned we're talking about, we can't put a zebra here, we can't put a zebra there, we'll put some drop. To be honest, a zebra crossing is way more easy to see than some, odd bit of concrete on the side that's a different shape. So whether it's a shorter distance and not our standard, we have an example just at the London Apprentice that we should be making zebra crossings. We have to provide safe passage from north to south to east to west. And yeah, we can talk about closing and conditions, but I've left myself in a situation where I thought we might be able to put this through with some amendments, but now I'm left going, I didn't, because I don't think, unless we have a lot of discussion with officers, I don't see how we can get enough amendments in this evening to make this safe. And therefore, I would prefer we defer it while we have further discussion on it, to be honest, Chairman. That's where I stand at the moment anyway.
Thank you. Councillor Vickers.
Chairman, myself and Councillor Barnett are the only two members of this committee who were around at the outline planning application. I'd actually been chucked off this committee by my colleagues, so I bear no responsibility for the decision, for the temerity of being the proposer of the racecourse application, which had similar sort of controversy around it. But I'm actually very keen to see this road open, and I have been for many years. This is a far from ideal solution, but the decision on the basic line of the road and its relationship with the buildings on the development are not part of this development. we're only looking at the detail, unfortunately. Now, a lot of public money's gone into this, you know, and the council, although it's not the applicant, is, you know, we thought we were going to have Mr. Winstanley with us, didn't we, tonight, you know, at director level, because they are very keen to see this open for understandable reasons. And we're not keen to even see it delay. I say we as the council, because this is cross-party, because costs are going up in the industry. However, we have two choices, I think. We either refuse and go back to the LEP or the government effectively and ask for £1 million, which may not come, or we accept our officer's recommendation with all the flaws. Unfortunately, planning law, and this is why we have so much contention around planning, you know, polluter pays principle, internalizing the externalities, as you know, in economics is the term, just doesn't work. So the people who win out of a planning application don't have to pay more in their taxes, and the people who lose don't get compensation, not within the planning system. You know, I referred to the bypass last time. And what I hope will happen here is that we get on and see the benefits as quickly as we can. And that's up to highways having what I thought will be an experimental traffic order on the day this road opens, so that the benefits can be shown to those that are benefiting. And in the meantime, that the officers sit down with the applicant and negotiate really hard to make sure we get the parking spaces, which is about the only thing that's in our gift as a council, whether it's planning or highways. That really must be a no-brainer, even if it means the developer losing some of their parking spaces. So I can't bring myself to refuse or even defer on this, but I'll listen to other people before I actually recommend approval.
Thank you. Councillor Barnett.
Well, Chairman, members, Councillor Vickers, of course, is mentioned my name in history terms. And yes, I can recall being involved from Newbie Town point of view back in, I don't know, 2013, I suppose, 14, 15, in the early days when it was all being discussed. And at that particular time, of course, it was a scheme which could well have been great benefit for the community in various areas, and in particular areas which I'm sure Councillor Vickers has got a very keen interest in. That was the definition of trying to redefine cycleways. And of course, that hasn't come up much in the debate tonight, but I would have hoped that that would have been perhaps considered on the flat, i.e. down Mill Lane, but that's probably for a discussion on another day. In regarding this particular application, you know, there's obviously certain benefits, and we've heard some of the benefits tonight, and it's quite interesting. Some of the benefits benefit certain group of residents, which probably, as I said earlier, they've realised they benefited. Although, of course, they've also benefited in another area. We've got electric trains now, whereas before, when it was diesel and previously before it was long welded track, it was quite noisy along that section. And so they're going to get the benefit of this acoustic fencing. And I think Councillor Cole was right. It really should be considered whether it should be the top of the bank or below the but probably that's another discussion that needs to take place. But my main concern is that this particular road clearly is going to have a great impact, and some of the residents, including the very good presentation from the ejector tonight, is highlighted the area where it's really going to have some effect. We're obviously, as elected members, concerned for the residents at large. And I was trying to highlight that in my presentation early on, that I really look at the global issue and I don't look at it in the smaller issue in the surrounding areas. And I think that we've got to look at everybody having a benefit to this. And I don't think, besides the benefit of, besides the effective residents that in 132 to 148, that their quality of life is going to be drastically reduced. We've also not really considered, although we've heard it in regarding cost implications, the traffic movements at that junction. And that to me is another big concern, because of course, you know, if it's approved and these traffic movements indicate there's going to be a great hold up, we as members, of course, immediately going to be confronted with the high-rated car users, van users and HGV users that are being restricted. And we've seen that regularly, even in the last week or so along Hambridge Road, when they've been resurfacing or when they've been digging up the road for various reasons. So, you know, I'm inclined, and I did say that I had an open mind, and I've tried to be clearer and having an open mind. I do feel that I'm actually very much in line with Councillor Abbs in supporting a rejection to this particular proposal tonight. I think Councillor Abbs is absolutely right. It's not a case of ruling it out of hand. It's going back to the drawing board and looking at other aspects that could be considered, because I think some of these points that we've already heard from the highways officer tonight that could well be implemented at a late stage, I'd like to see them already being on the table so we could actually discuss them. And I think some of those points could be considered if it's taken away as a deferment. So I don't know, were you actually proposing a deferment?
I would settle for a deferment.
Hang on. Let's get the debate going on first, please. We're not having a discussion between the two.
Sorry, I wanted clarification whether
I did not take a proposal. There was no proposal.
You did, okay. He was suggesting a suggestion.
I think I would have delayed on taking a decision on that. Considering that was the first speaker, I think.
I'm going to back off in regarding supporting one or the other.
I think on something as important as this, we ought to hear everybody's debate before we make a decision, because somebody might just turn the argument here. So I'm now with Councillor Culver. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. I think it's difficult to turn it down if we are going to have a problem with accessibility to the flats. So we heard at the beginning that the people in the flats are going to have a problem with accessibility if the road is too low, which is what they've currently got permission for. So they need the road to be higher, and presumably if we don't pass it, there will be a problem with people accessing those flats. Having said that, to my mind, if I was going to approve this evening, I would want clarity that there are heavy conditions on this that can be delivered. So, for example, turning Kings Road into a cul-de-sac, addressing our concerns about the mini roundabout. I don't understand why we thought it was only going to cost $250,000 and now it's upwards of $1 million. I'm not quite sure whether that's because we didn't look at it properly or increased costs of materials or whatever, but it seems like a bit of an error of judgment to not have realised that and now have this problem where we're not sure what to do with that junction. I would also want a condition about how people get access to Sainsbury's, for example. So unless we can condition those things and we know they can all be delivered at the same time, I would be inclined to defer it. I mean, my understanding is this was approved in 2015 and still not been an agreement with the developer about allowing the residents at 132 to 148 to have parking spaces in the building, for example. Now, if that's taken 7 years, I have no confidence that if we were to look at something like a cul-de-sac, that would be delivered quick enough to deal with the problems we've discussed this evening. And I would want to see it all delivered at the same time. Thank you, Chairman.
I'll just hold that there, Councillor Goldwell, because as a part of this discussion, we do collate our conditions. Now, if you're thinking the roundabout and the cul-de-sac and that, I will ask both Mrs. Armour and the officers just to pen that 1 minute. And then we've got an absolute condition down that at some stage I will then address Mr. Till to see if they are in the remit of this application that we can actually consider. And he will address us on that then when we come to do the conditions. So if I could just hold those conditions, and if you just remind us later on that we have discussed those and members may agree with them. So I'll hold that moment there. Councillor Doxty.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm actually going to do something I don't often do, which is agree entirely with Councillor Vickers here. Having looked at the application, and I'm looking at the application on its merit, I'm not looking at what's gone before it or anything else, I'm looking at tonight's application. I think that's really important to state, and I think it's really important to state to the objectors, because we have to look at what is in front of us today. And there's two concerns with the current
application as I see it, and they're the changes, and the biggest changes around the proposed traffic signals on the B3421 Kings Road, Hambridge Road. However, I specifically asked Mr. Godfrey the question around traffic modelling, and the traffic modelling is showing very limited difference, and that junction has worked, and I'm not aware of any major collisions on that junction in the entire time that I've lived in the area, which is a long time. So based on the fact that that traffic modelling has been done and that there isn't additional concerns around the safety on that point, and there is still the pedestrian crossing opposite the Apprentice, the London Apprentice, I'm willing to support tonight's application, and if Councillor Vickers wanted to put forward something, I'd be very minded to support him in that. What I would say is I am concerned around the impact on Kings Road. I agree with everything that's been said this evening with regards to the residents there and making sure that there is that parity across what's happening there. One of the things I'm sure I heard during the debate was there might be an opportunity, even if I agree we should be getting everything out the developer we possibly can, but you're right, there is parking on that road which is unrestricted parking, and I think if we were to make that permit parking, there is an opportunity there as well to make sure that that was a temporary measure that would assist and everything else. And I agree as well around that whole need to come forward with the cul-de-sac ASAP to make sure that that doesn't then become a rat run. So I'm very minded to support this evening's application.
Thank you. Councillor Cole.
It's difficult, isn't it? It's a bit of a balance. I think I go slightly the other way. I would go for a deferral unless we can come up with the necessary conditions to deal with obviously the Kings Road blocking off, but also I just have the nasty feeling that the pedestrian routes have not been thought through here. Councillor Culver's view on the route to Sainsbury's, it's not been discussed until this evening from the sound of it. If we can come up with tonight a set of conditions that will satisfy this, then of course I'll go along with it. We all want this to go through, but we want the conditions to be right. That is my view.
Councillor Cole, you've brought up the conditions of going to Sainsbury's. What is your proposal, that condition that we ought to consider?
I don't have a proposal. I find it very difficult. I was rather hoping that our planning officers could come up with a suitable set of conditions to deal with this. I'm not a planning officer.
At this level, though, it's for us as this committee to set the conditions. It's our responsibility at this stage. And we'll discuss it after that, but that's my feeling on this one.
Oh, thank you, Chairman. Yeah, so this is, I guess, the presumption is it's obviously been granted under the original application to have this link road in principle. I think the benefits clearly are evident to having this. I do have concerns around the traffic signals, the fact that that's not going to be in place, because I do still think that's a really difficult junction. However, I'm not going to repeat what's been said, but I think I'm not sure deferral is the right approach to this. I would hope we could put some conditions down tonight that we could properly define amongst us. There's been some themes coming out that I think we're all in agreement need to be addressed. I would go for conditioning with the hope that we could then support this tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Cant.
Thank you, Chair. And in these situations, I always look at, I'm bearing in mind that none of us are traffic technicians or experts in road layout or anything else. We're all speculating about what's possible. I start generally from the point of view of assuming that we can have enough trust in our professionally qualified officers to trust them to have looked at the range of options. And it's our job really to look to see whether there are fairly significant and obvious flaws in those options that haven't been considered. I've seen nothing and heard nothing tonight, which leads me to believe that is the case, or anything that would enable us to put proper grounds together for refusing planning consent. And I also look at this, I think there are 167 flats under construction, and I always look at unintended consequences. And my sense of this is, okay, so we agonise over this for months and months, going round and round with multiple considerations being considered by officers. And what happens in the meantime when the flats are completed and there's a mess because the road system is not being adjusted anyway. So I'm in favour of, I support Councillor Vickers in his contention. This is probably something that, although it's uncomfortable for a number of people, and I'm very sympathetic to that, that probably on balance, I would have to vote for it.
Thank you. Councillor Abbs.
I did say the reason I would rather defer is I doubt we can get enough conditions sorted this evening. But if we are talking conditions, then I certainly would. Mr. Goddard talked about it. I really want to see zebra crossings, whether they are exactly to spec or not. I just want it nice and clear, north, south, east and west. So in terms of what I'd like to see as conditions is the one that's in the middle of the development that's just dropped curves at the moment. Well, why can't it be a zebra crossing? So I have a lot easier to see. Between the north and south, I've got it on my screen here. I'm sure Mr. Goddard can see it because I've left it up for him, but I'm just doing street view and the piece of land directly opposite. Anybody go there? There's clearly a way of introducing something similar. So north, south, east and west. I'd also like to see another one that isn't even mentioned, which is on the edge of the outline, red outline, is when you go to the north of the boundary road. Because if you're going to start talking about walking around this area, then you actually need to get across the road from the London Apprentice across the boundary road there as well. So there should be one there as well. So, you know, let's get them sorted out. And the Sainsbury's one, yeah, you were right. If we're going to go around the north, Mr. Goddard mentioned it again. I want to see a zebra crossing to Sainsbury's, just north of the roundabout where the moles cat. So there's quite a lot of zebra crossings, I know, and I'm sorry if we haven't got enough paint, but you know, we need to get these things right. So that's where I was coming from, and there's more actually, because my understanding was that when this modelling was done, that the modelling was done when the traffic light scheme was there. This traffic modelling that you were referring to, Councillor Lockerty. So if I'm mistaken, fair enough, someone please tell me I'm wrong. But if the modelling was done with traffic's there and now the traffics aren't there, the modelling isn't correct and can't be correct. So I have a serious concern then about what that is. Now, unfortunately, we're at the point at which we can get clarity from officers, but that's a critical point for me to know whether or not which way I should vote, really.
I think this is a very difficult and complex application, and I'm obviously going to be very, very flexible as to who we ask. But on the conclusion of this, I've already had a word with Mr. Till and Mr. Goddard and Mr. Masawi as to when we put the conditions to make sure they are in our remit and see if we can take this forward, because it's encouraging tonight that as a committee, I think we've come together, and I think we've patched this together. And we're coming together. We're not there yet, but I think it's worth the time to get some.
There are two more. Of course, I support everybody's calls for parking for the residents somewhere. It must be delivered.
So let me just go through to get this clear. Let me just go through this clear. If you could now list your conditions so we can write these down as a part of the
zebra crossing at the middle of the development.
Right.
It's down as drop curve. The zebra crossing connecting the north and south.
With a possible compromise of a drop curb if we can't get the logistics in for the lights. That's the problem. It's money. As I say to my residents, you can have everything you want as long as you pay for it. And there's a compromise in cost and what we can afford. Yep, right.
Well, I mean, just on that, I take your point, Chairman, but as I mentioned earlier, that particular section of the road is probably dug up every 6 months.
Okay, let's move on. Let's move on. Time's getting on. So let's have your other conditions, please.
Well, yeah, and the residents that are directly affected, I think we need to talk about something for them that actually kind of takes care of the noise. And that fence has to be moved from the bottom to the top. I cannot understand.
That's a condition. Thank you. And another condition. Any more conditions?
Well, can we deliver on any of those? And that's
well. Let's just list the conditions first, and then we'll move on to the next stage. I think. Okay.
I can come back to mine, Chairman, but
Councillor Vickers is next. Thank you.
Well, Chairman, we look as though we're sort of talking about Councillor Abbs's proposal. My red line on this is the red light. I need to see a red light controlling traffic in some way along that stretch of road. I'm not happy that the traffic lights are being withdrawn. So I would have been proposing that we accept officer's recommendation, subject to the red light being replaced as was originally approved in the outline application. Now, it doesn't have to be a pre-start condition. It could be a pre-occupation condition. That gives the council and the developer and every other funder the chance to find the money to do it, because that's what was approved at outline. That is the ideal.
Thank
So
you.
if I find a seconder for that,
Yeah.
and officers can confirm or that is a legal way to go about tonight's meeting, that's what I want. Now, I would, as a second option, if that fails, I would go with Councillor Abbs. Thank you.
I'm now going with Councillor Cole again.
Thank you, Chairman. Do you want me to elaborate on the conditions that I briefly mentioned earlier?
Yes, I think we're
Yeah.
collating those now.
Great, thank
through
you very
two
much.
officers here.
So I would argue that we should say that the cul-de-sacing of Kings Road should be ready to come into effect at the same time that the link road opens. The crossing near Sainsbury's that Councillor Abbs mentioned just now. And also an agreement before that bit at the top becomes two-way near 132 to 148. There must be an agreement about where those people are allowed to park in the future before that two-way opens. Because as soon as that two-way opens, they won't be allowed to park there anymore. So that all has to be timed at the same time, in my opinion.
Thank you. I've got no more hands. Oh, yeah, sorry, Councillor Doherty. Your hand disappears into your backdrop, I'm afraid, so I can't see it. You put up on your screen. So to Councillor.
I'm more than happy to propose accepting this proposal this evening. And I'm more than happy to talk about conditions. The red light, I don't think is a condition as far as I'm concerned, because I think the cost is prohibitive. And I don't think that there is enough justification on it based on the traffic modelling and the evidence before me this evening. So I agree with the conditions with regards to, I'm not quite sure where Councillor Abbs is with the number of zebra crossings and the feasibility of those, but the additional, I'm more than happy to talk about the parking impacts on Kings Road and making sure that they're included. And I'm more than happy to talk about the stopping traffic flow into Kings Road, but I'm not making the red light a condition because I think it's cost prohibitive. And I think we'll be looking at a situation where 167 flats won't be able to access that building when they're ready to access it, because I can't see anyone stepping forward with that sum of money. And I think that will stop access to the 167 residents that are hoping to move in there. So I'm more than happy to put that forward, proposal forward, and then to talk conditions.
Members, I've got a proposal for officer's recommendation. Do I have a second, please? Councillor Cant as a second, thank you. What I propose to do now is pass this over to the officers, and I'll let Mr. Till orchestrate this with his two officers and legal. I think he's collated all the conditions that I've asked for you to identify, and just go through and say, can they be accommodated? And then give us some idea as to whether or not they can be achieved. That might just focus our minds a bit more. Mr. Till.
Thank you, Chairman. So I shall start at the top of my list, which is the access conditions for pedestrian improvements. So I have access to Sainsbury's via a formalised route. And Chairman, I must immediately raise concerns that this would be outside of the red line of the planning application. However, Chairman.
Advise us though whether it can or can't be applied to help this application through.
Chairman,
although it's out the red line,
Chairman,
you might say it's being considered at a later time.
Thank you, Chairman. Chairman, that can't be considered under this application, but it is to be considered by highways separately from the planning process.
Thank you.
Secondly, I have the proposal to formalise a condition for turning Kings Road into a cul-de-sac at the same time that the link road is employed. Chairman, my advice again would be that those works would substantially fall outside of the red line of the planning application, but that there is advice that highways will be looking at this matter at a later date.
And Mr. Goddard did advise us of that in his presentation.
Chairman, thirdly, there was mention of a mini roundabout at the end of Boundary Road. Members, should you consider that condition necessary, bearing in mind the advice from Highways earlier on about 4 points roundabouts, then that condition, those works would fall within the red line, and therefore we could apply a condition requiring a plan to be provided showing how that would be demonstrated. But I'd also like Mr. Goddard to comment on his view on that as well.
Chairman, thank you. Regarding the proposed conditions and the request for zebra crossings, unfortunately, there is always design criteria set out in the Department of Transport of when you can and cannot provide zebra crossings. And I'm not suitably familiar to be able to pick on each suggested one and give you advice on whether it meets criteria or is acceptable or not. So therefore, notwithstanding what Mr. Till has suggested about whether to apply conditions off site or not, I would perhaps suggest to you as a way forward that a set of informatives are provided that would cover some of the points that members have raised. I am particularly focused on the provision of some sort of pedestrian facility fronting 132 to 148 Kings Road, and particularly as suggested by Councillor Culver, just to the north of the existing roundabout fronting Sainsbury's. And maybe there's some of the others that we could take this away and consider it. But I cannot give you a sort of assurance tonight, yes, we can provide a zebra crossing here and a zebra crossing there. I just can't do it. It would need to be considered fully at some other point. With regards to the creation of Kings Road as a cul-de-sac, that was something separate outside this planning application that we as a council wanted to pursue with residents. Again, maybe some informatives could be applied on how we do that if members have certain views and to have certain things in place by what time, perhaps. I'm just trying to say what limitations and difficulties I have with some of the conditions that have been forwarded, but I'm also thinking of ways forward that can help this planning application through. We've talked about the parking for the existing residents. This is a concern of your highway officers for some 8 years. And no, we still haven't resolved it with the developer because the relevant condition has yet to be discharged. But we can put a new one in, not with this planning application that concerns the road, but it can go in with the planning application that's in parallel with this, the non-MAT, because that planning application is considering the building where the car parking actually takes place. Chairman, I think unless anybody else has got any other questions, I think that's all I can sort of recommend at this stage. It may not be ideal, but I think it's perhaps the best that I can currently offer.
Thank you. I've got a question from councillors, but I'm not going to take those at the moment. I think I'm going to let Mr. Till continue down his list, and then we'll collectively pick up these issues.
Chairman, thank you. As a supplementary in terms of the zebra crossings, Mr. Goddard, I'd just like to question whether you say that those would be considered under informatives. Would you be seeking those informatives to require that changes to the plans approved under this planning application would be made, or that those would go forward as part of the consideration of adoption agreements at a later date?
Chairman, I'm open to all suggestions. If members need to have another opportunity to consider these proposals as they come forward, if certain details need to perhaps be liaised with the local ward members, for instance, on these crossings, I'm open to ideas.
Thank you, Chair. It would be really helpful, I think, if you could clarify, particularly for the public, the difference between an informative, obviously, and a condition, and what that means in practice in terms of taking that forward, if you don't mind, and also for my benefit, because it's been a while. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Chairman. It's a very useful question, and part of the reason that I'm asking Mr. Goddard here to clarify, because a planning condition would require the developer to do something. An informative provides a direction for either the developer or an involved party, in this case the local highways authority, to look at something in future considerations. And in this case, the informatives would be directing somebody to look at the potential for providing crossing places. And my concern in recommending informatives is not to have members with the expectation that the developer would then be carrying out those works, because the informatives would basically leave us in a position where the local highways authority had to consider those works as part of adoption of the roads. So it would be outside of the control of this particular planning permission. Chairman, may I continue on with
if you would,
the list of suggested
I note
conditions?
Councillor Barnett, we'll hold fire with that one, Councillor, and then we'll finish Mr. Till's presentation on the conditions, please.
Chairman, then I had, following the comments regarding highways matters, a relocation of the acoustic boundary to the top of the bank. Members, that is, of course, a condition that you could apply, requiring a plan showing that the acoustic boundary was to be relocated. My only concern in that respect is that the environmental health officer has made a comprehensive assessment of the location of that acoustic boundary and has confirmed that in his view it is actually the best location for the preservation of the amenity of residential properties. There was a counter proposal from highways to relocate it in a different location, and that was queried, and the environmental health officer did confirm that it was the better location, was the one that is currently constructed.
On that point, can this committee override that environmental officer's opinion with a condition?
Chairman, yes, the committee can override that opinion.
Thank you.
There was a suggested condition from Councillor Vickers to reinstate the light-controlled junction, but I believe that Councillor Doherty doesn't wish that condition to be put forward. The final.
I'll just ask legal. That is being proposed. Is that worth a proposal and second to see if it's in? We have Councillor Vickers saying yes. We have Councillor Doherty saying no.
I think the current proposal is without it. If that one fails for whatever reason, then Councillor Vickers can by all means make another proposal.
Okay.
Thank you, Chairman. Chairman, my final note on the conditions was that there was mention of agreeing the parking relocation before the two-way element opens. The parking is actually dealt with in a separate planning application, and it wouldn't be, in my eyes, lawful to apply a condition that sought to duplicate that control on this planning application, particularly where that parking is outside of the red line of the application site. Thank you, Chairman.
So, can we now, I know I'm asking you to do an awful lot of work tonight, but now can we collate what we have got that we can say are the conditions going forward? Just 1 minute. Mr. Till.
Thank you, Chairman. The conditions are as officers have recommended, plus a condition requiring that the acoustic barrier is replaced in an alternative location, and the plan is submitted to demonstrate that. And I presume, Chairman, that that would be prior to occupation of, prior to the road being taken into use.
Councillor Culver, Councillor Culver, this was your point, wasn't it? You're happy with that? Thank
Well,
you.
I think it's Councillor Doherty's proposal, so she needs to be happy with it.
Would you be happy with that?
And whether she wants to go ahead, given the officer's advice.
I don't have the experience to override environmental health advice. And if they've looked at this and double looked at it, I would not want to override environmental health. I don't know enough about where you should place an acoustic barrier. I would far rather that professionals told me the best place.
Okay. I'm concerned the conditions are falling away here, chaps. So give this some thought. Carry on, Mr. Till.
Thank you. Then we had the potential condition regarding a mini roundabout to be imposed at the junction of Boundary Road and Kings Road. Mr. Goddard's spoken regarding that, so you might wish to query that as well.
Mr. Goddard.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I was going to make one further point of clarity, if I may. Yes, I've asked that perhaps informatives be provided for works outside the site. But there's two places of pedestrian crossings that Councillor Abbs listed that are within the site, including across Kings Road just to north of the site, and the crossing that is shown just to the west of the site. We could have a condition in there. It has to be worded appropriately that prior to, let's say, occupation, appropriate crossing points are appropriate and improved crossing points are provided in both those locations and submitted in writing and approved by the local planning authority prior to occupation, and then provided thereof, something like that. It doesn't tie us down to the type of crossing, but it does at least provide something on the Kings Road arm. There would be a suggestion that we could do something more there. And because that is within the red line, then it could be a condition if my planning officers concur.
Councillor Abbs, does that close the gap?
It helps a bit, but I did have a slight suggestion on at the dispute between the other two councillors about red lights, if I may. It might help.
Yes, I think so.
You may not find this acceptable either, but clearly there is the existing pedestrian crossing opposite the Apprentice. It already has flashing beacons. Turning those into traffic lights would stop the flow east to west, at appropriate points for people to cross. It wouldn't be the full set of traffic lights, so it shouldn't cost $1 million. But I'm not a traffic light purchasing person. But it would be another way of pausing the traffic to allow people to. And then with the other stuff that we've talked about, then I think with that, then the improved crossings would then start to really have an effect.
Mr. Goddard, any movement on this? Yeah, but any movement on this?
Chairman, I think that existing zebra crossing is within the red line. But once again, it's outside the red line, okay.
Yeah. So yeah.
Again, that would be, in my view, informative territory. And again, I can't say that's a good idea to provide that as a signal crossing, because signal crossings again meet certain criteria, and I haven't been able to consider that and advise you definitely on that. Whether you could provide a signal crossing there or not. So therefore, I don't think I can help you any further.
Okay, I'm now looking, Councillor Barnett.
Well, I think it's helpful to listen to some of the concerns of members and the conditions which are very much close to my thinking as well. But I am a little bit concerned still about the displaced parking. That we talked about the possibility of a cul-de-sac, but when that might happen, one would be a little bit unclear, and also in relationship to the affected residents and their parking on the development. When would that happen? I mean, I would I would very much like to see some condition in relationship to if a proposal for a cul-de-sac is to identify where the cul-de-sac would start.
I think we're extending the debate now.
I'm sorry, but I think it does have an effect in relationship to the point which I think Councillor Doherty was talking about, was the possible extra parking that could be generated through unrestricted parking, which could be included in the parking permits scheme area. And that area, if we knew exactly where the closure of the cul-de-sac would be, I suspect it could be very close to where 132 is, or very close to the mini roundabout. And if that was the case, we could actually have a few places for these affected residents within the resident scheme, which will be the cul-de-sac.
Thank you. Members, I'm going to draw a line under the debate now, and we have a proposer, Councillor Doherty, and that is seconded by Councillor Cant. I will now go to our legal advisor, Mrs. Armour, just to remind us whether you'd like to go through those conditions, or are we quite happy as they were last collated through Mr. Till?
I think it might be helpful if Mr. Till just did a quick summary,
so.
And then
and any informatives that we might like to put on there. Mr. Till, you're on the hot seat tonight, but
thank you, Chairman. I do appreciate it. It's a very complicated matter. In respect of the highways matters, substantially, it would appear to me that the matters in relation to the cul-de-sac and to the crossings should be an informative for those options to be explored. However, I can confirm that the condition that Mr. Goddard has suggested in relation to prior to the road being brought into use, the crossing places to be provided is a condition that we could apply through requiring the developer to provide a plan to demonstrate that those two crossing points that are within the red line that are for members' benefit to the the north of the new building and the south of houses along King's Road, and to the east of the new development between the two new proposed mini roundabouts, to the west of the development between the two proposed mini roundabouts, that those would be required to be provided prior to the road being brought into use. In respect of other matters regarding the highway, I think informatives would be the appropriate way forward, and I believe that that wraps up the conditions that were discussed.
And do the informatives need listing?
So the informatives that I have are regarding provision of a formalised route for access to Sainsbury's, for parking, permit parking to be explored on the unrestricted part of King's Road, and for additional crossing options, I believe, to be explored adjacent to the London Apprentice, and adjacent to Sainsbury's.
Just to be clear for Mr. Till, then, Boundary Road North opposite the London Apprentice. Okay.
Members, are we happy with those conditions and those informatives?
One very quick
Colbert.
point. I believe Mr. Goddard said that the condition about the parking for the residents at 132 to 148 could be changed as a condition of the non-map parallel application. If I could have clarification on that, that can be dealt with through that, then that would satisfy me that that's covered. Thank you.
Chairman, yes, definitely. That is the planning application to do it because it considers the building and the parking within it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm happy. You're all happy. So the recommendation is for Head of Planning and Countryside be authorised to grant planning permission for application number 22/00493 full. This is at Stirling Gardens, Hector Way at Newbury. And this is for the new link road connecting Hector's Way, King's Road through to Stirling Estate Development with associated retaining walls. Mrs. Armour, would you please conduct the vote?
Okay, so those in favour of the proposal? Okay, and those against? So I can't see you. Are you abstaining?
Hold on, let's have against
Sorry,
first,
Councillor
please. One
Barnett,
against.
are you against?
One
Abstain?
against,
Okay,
one abstain.
thank you.
Members, this application has been granted. Thank you very much. I'm conscious of the time and I'm conscious of where the facilities are. So I think we will resume if you would all like a break. All in favour?
Point of information, Chairman, we got 2 applications.
We have got 2 applications. I'm just putting it.
But bearing in mind people, I think here for both applications, should we be making the decision?
Mr. Bartlett, Councillor Bartlett, I'm putting it to the members, but I'm conscious that would you like to have a convenience break or push through? If we do have one, I'm saying we need to come back at 9:30. And a show of hands, we push on. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Right. No convenience break. For those members of the public that came on the last application, thank you very much for your submissions. We now move on to application number 2 before the committee this evening, and this is application 21/03132. This is 14 Line Close, partial retrospective application for the retention of an existing metal staircase to the side gable and the addition of a proposed privacy screen. This has come to committee because of 10 letters or more of objection. Mr. Houston is to do the presentation. Mr. Houston's not in the building, but he's going to present this by Zoom. So, Mr. Dunn, if you could bring in Mr. Houston, please.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Houston is already on the panel, so he can begin presenting when he's ready.
Thank you. Mr. Houston, when you're ready.
As I'm dialing in remotely, I can't access the presentation. So could I request that Mr. Till screen shares in order to bring the presentation?
Mr. Houston, just 1 minute. I've got this irritating ringing going. Has somebody got their telephone on, please? It's been going on all evening. Nope. Right, Mr. Houston, back to you, please. We got a problem, Mr. Houston, did he say?
I've just got to share the screen,
Okay.
Chairman.
Thank you, Simon. Thank you, Chairman. Members, for this item, we are considering the partially retrospective householder application for planning permission to retain the external metal staircase with the addition of a privacy screen at 14 Lime Close, Newbury. The officer's recommendations for approval and the applications come for committee because of 10 or more objections. Important context for this application is an earlier application on this site 21/00445/house, which sought to retain the existing external staircase in its current form, which was subsequently refused by the council on the basis of the harm it would cause to the character of the area and the harm to neighbouring amenity through overlooking and a loss of privacy. The LPA's decision was appealed and the subsequent decision issued by the inspectorate upheld the reason for refusal on amenity grounds due to a substantial level of actual and perceived overlooking with a demonstrable loss of privacy. However, the inspectorate overturned our reason for refusal on grounds of character. This application has been made subsequent to this decision. But I request Mr. Till to move on to the next couple of slides, if that's all right. So this is the location block plan. This is how the staircase, sorry, that was how the staircase appears as existing and as was noted on the site visit on Monday. Sorry, could we go to the next slide? Sorry. Yes, so this is the staircase as existing. Next slide. And as proposed with the addition of the 1.8 metre tall privacy screen. So the main issues that are being considered in this application are whether the addition of this screen has been sufficient to address the issues regarding overlooking and a loss of privacy, and whether this additional privacy screen proposed in this application would result in additional harm to the character and appearance of the area beyond that of the staircase on its own. The reason for this is that having already considered the impact of the staircase on the character and appearance of the area and found this not to merit grounds for refusal on its own, the inspectors left a strong precedent that the visual impact of the stair should be considered acceptable. Next slide, please. So this is a view of the staircase from within the site. As members will have noted on Monday, the staircase is currently covered in a substantial volume of vegetation, which is why I've utilised photos from an earlier visit without vegetation, as it gives a much better idea of how it will appear prior to the currently proposed works. So the screening to this staircase is going to comprise two parts, being a close forward black trellis affixed to the lower half of these staircase railings, an 80cm tall glass screen above these railings starting from the third riser, which will encompass both the north, the elevation we are looking at, and the east elevations, which will be conditioned to a high level of obscurity. The officers have made a judgment in this case that the design of the screen with the 1.8 metre total height is considered to be a standard height for privacy screening between properties, as an example, close bordered fencing, which would be sufficient to address the issues identified by preventing a direct overlook into neighbouring properties. In communications subsequent to the Monday's visit, it has been indicated by the agent that they may be amenable to increasing the height of the screen to 2 metres should members deem it necessary by condition. No other issues regarding amenity, including overshadowing or loss of light, have been identified in this instance. And to qualify the issues regarding amenity that have been outlined, could I just go to the next few slides, please? Sorry, next slide. As just showing views from the existing cul-de-sac. Next one. I think it's about 3 slides from now, possibly. Keep going. I'm trying to get to the view. There we go. Yes, views from the staircase as existing, just showing the identified overlooks into the neighbouring properties. I think there's one more after this one. Yeah, there we go. So just turning back to character briefly, the key factor that was identified by the inspectorate in this case was the limited visibility of the proposal from locations within the public realm, such as roads, footpaths, and the public rights of way. So as you saw a moment ago, the views of the proposal from the Lying Close cul-de-sac are highly limited due to the end terrace location. If you just go to the next slide, I think it will be the next one. Yes, there we go. So that is the a distant and fairly limited view from Crossroads Road. This was particularly identified by the inspector as being views of the structure from a distance, and where the majority of views are limited to private land, including gardens and rear windows of houses, where there isn't the same right to a view existing, and where the views are generally considered to be less sensitive. It was therefore considered by officers that the principle outlined in the appeal decision continues to apply in considering this application, and that the impact of the works on views over the site from the private realm would not result in significant harm. It was concluded that the additional mass of the holistic scheme as a result of the privacy screen would not merit refusal of this application. This would be consistent with the inspector's finding regarding the stair itself. Next couple of slides, please, just to demonstrate some private views of this. So this is from 42, and I believe our final one's from 44. After this one. Yeah, there we go. Just regarding a couple of other matters, members did raise during the site meeting concerns in respect of future subdivision of the current dwelling into a HMO or flats. We have to be explicit that this is not what has been applied for under this application, and the stated use of this staircase is as part of one dwelling. Any future subdivision would be a separate set of works that may require planning permission on its own. Turning to the update sheet, you'll note that some additional clarification has been given on some of the heights queried at site visits, but your officer's recommendation remains for approval subject to the conditions set out in the agenda report. Thank you, Chairman. That is all.
Thank you, Mr. Houston. We now come on to the presentations of our invited attendees. And again, it gives my pleasure, Councillor Foote, you're back on.
Thank you very much, Chairman. This application's come before Newbury Town Council on 2 occasions. And once again, I'll just read our findings. The first one on the 24th of January 2022, and our recommendation was as follows. Objection due to the overbearing of the neighbours causing privacy concerns and the noise caused by the metal staircase. Then this came before us again, and our submission on the 7th of March was that we strongly object. And the objection was due to the overbearing of the neighbours causing privacy concerns and once again the noise caused by the metal staircase. And we went on to say we would ask the planning authority to take enforcement action in this matter because this is obviously a retrospective planning application and the staircase was already put up, giving neighbours no chance to object to it before that staircase was built. So that's all I have to say, Chairman. I'd be very happy to answer any questions members have. Thank you.
Any questions, members? No questions. Thank you, Councillor. We now come on to our objectors, and this evening we have Karen Munro. Ms. Munro. I'll just remind you, you have 5 minutes, 4 minutes, you'll have a notification from me, and 10 seconds I'll say in conclusion.
Okay.
When you're ready.
Okay, I live at 38 Creswell Road, so I'm directly opposite the gable end that you could see on the on the photos. The members that have actually come to the site on Monday could actually see firsthand that 80% of my property is actually overlooked by this staircase and door. They can see me laying on my bedroom, on my bed, my living room, my dining room. I have not been able to use my garden. For the last 18 months, I've had to have my curtains and blinds shut for the fear of overlooking. As you can see from the pictures, it's already quite an eyesore. For the addition of this privacy screen, I feel that this will be completely overbearing, not only for myself, but my neighbour who I'm obviously attached to because it's a semi-detached house. This also impacts another 3 houses because this garden actually goes around the corner of Creswell Road. As Mr. Foote has said, that this is a retrospective change. At no point has I question where the building control has been. This is quite a substantial structural change to the building. I'm having changes myself in my own home, and I've had to have my own planning application, and I've had building control in. I question that this has not been done on this property. It has completely affected my well-being and actually my day-to-day life. For the last 18 months. And I'm actually saddened that I'm here again trying to get support, for me and the residents, to have this removed. I appreciate that it's not a great area, but it doesn't mean that we don't care about our properties. And I'm sure if any of you actually had that, were looking out of your house and your garden, you'd feel exactly the same as myself. I'm concerned about the noise as well. And just, for me, for somebody that goes through the proper process, I think this completely makes a mockery to put a retrospective change in. And this is probably not the time to say it, but actually I feel it does. I feel that people shouldn't be looking for a resolution for it. I feel that people should be using the process. Otherwise, what's the point? That's probably about it, really. Otherwise, I'll let the emotion get to it, and that's not really what I want to do. So I'm sorry about that.
Thank you, Ms Munro. Members, any questions of Ms Munro? Councillor Rolls, thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for your presentation. Can I just ask you about the noise point you raised? Could you just elaborate a little bit more on that?
Okay, it's a metal staircase, so that would travel. People going up and down it. There's a doorbell that's on the door, so to me that signifies it's going to be quite a lot of use. Actually, I forgot to mention that the owner has continued to do work. There's actually electric sticking out by the door, which I'm presuming is going to be a security light. Again, that's probably going to look straight into my bedrooms in my property. So there's additional, the owner's, continually been doing work and has used it, even though this has not been approved.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Munro. That concludes the questions from the members.
Thank you.
We have no supporters to address us tonight, but we do have the agent, Amanda Ollie from Summit Planning Limited. Ms Ollie.
Thank you.
5 minutes, 4 minute notice and 20 seconds to conclude if you need it.
Okay, thank you. So good evening to all the committee members and thanks for the invitation to speak this evening. You have before you obviously a detailed officer report that brings to a head some 18 months of submissions in relation to the matter at hand. Excuse me. You'll be aware that this matter, as has been explained by your officer, has been subject of an initial application that was refused planning permission by the council at the delegated level. That was then appealed and the appeal was dismissed only on the ground for the potential for overlooking to neighbouring properties. This was based on the proposal only at that point to retain the staircase as is currently installed, which you've seen on the plans and the pictures, and as can be currently viewed at the site, which you'll have had the benefit of seeing at your site visit on Monday. The appeal inspector's judgment was clear that no reasonable grounds of refusal could be sustained insofar as the visual appearance of the staircase is concerned. And in relation to the concern relating to the potential for overlooking, this opened the door to a solution. Well, the inspector opened the door to a solution on this matter, and that's what's become the subject of the application that's now in front of you this evening. It's important to note that the appeal decision and its reasoning is binding on both the council and the applicant. We recognise that. The revised application before you proposes the introduction of a privacy screen to the staircase. The privacy screen is currently proposed at a height of 1.8 metres, which is a reasonable eye height that would more than account for the height of an average person. It's proposed that the screen be obscurely glazed at the upper level to achieve the effect of obscuring any perceived potential for overlooking to the rear of neighbouring properties that was identified by the appeal inspector. It's also had the effect of neutralising the perceived comings and goings from the application property as they may be viewed from outside of the application site. Positive impact of the proposed privacy screen has been reflected in the nature of the representations that have been submitted in relation to the application, the current application, excuse me, where we find that a balanced view has been submitted in relation to the application between those nearby neighbours who wish to maintain an objection and those neighbours who recognise the efforts of the applicant in seeking to address the single area of concern. This includes a nearby neighbour also on Creswell Road who has a direct view of the staircase also and has confirmed no ongoing objection on the basis proposed. As advised in the officer report, the introduction of the privacy screen results in views of all angles being highly limited. Whilst the applicant is confident that it has struck an appropriate and acceptable balance between the extent of the proposed privacy screen and its resulting visual appearance, it's understood from the member site visit earlier this week, the comment was raised as to whether or not the proposed height is sufficient. If this is a matter that is concerning to members, the applicant is not intransigent at the 1.8 metre height and would be agreeable to a further reasonable increase in the proposed height of the screen if that was considered absolutely necessary and if it would provide further comfort to members on the perceived impact to neighbours. Having already gone through the appeal process and received clear direction in the judgment of the inspector, the applicant is obviously keen that this matter should not end up at appeal again and ideally wishes to avoid that process and the unfortunate application for costs that could result as a part of any appeal submission. The proposed privacy screen has appropriately addressed the single concern that was highlighted by the inspector and presents an acceptable way forward to bring this matter hopefully to a close. We thank members for excuse me, we thank members for listening and would respectfully urge the committee to endorse your officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ollie. Members, any questions, please? Yes, we do. Councillor Abs.
Yes, thank you for your presentation. You didn't mention noise at all.
Pardon?
You didn't mention noise at all.
That's right.
So as far as you're concerned, the metal staircase, I believe was mentioned at the time as a flat surface. You've no concern. You don't think there'll be any intrusion. Nothing to worry about.
From a noise point of view, no. I mean, the staircase isn't finished off yet anyway, so there is additional.
Well, I understand that, but it was mentioned on site about it being a hard surface. So
Well, it's metal at the moment.
I know it is.
Yeah.
So you have no concern, and you
No,
don't wish to
no.
address it.
No.
Okay, thank you very much.
Councillor Camp.
Thank you, Chair. I'm one of the 2 ward councillors of this area. I'm very familiar with having canvassed that area a lot and been around to see the site. Just for absolute clarity for me, I've never heard before of someone in a relatively small semi-detached house with an internal staircase needing to put an outside staircase on the building. And I wonder if you could just clarify for me exactly what it is you think the applicant intends to happen, or why that's necessary for the applicant.
Yes, I can do. I don't think I know what he wants to do. I know what it is that he actually wants to do, and it's been set out in both application submissions that have been we've been in with the appeal
Would you mind going
papers.
through it briefly again?
So the applicant's mother-in-law, who's currently resides in Poland, they want to bring her to live with them. They're started to make some internal arrangements to allow for a sort of an internal annex, if you like, which would still be accessible internally from within the property, but would provide an independent means of external access into and out of the property for her as well.
So it's becoming 2 flats.
No.
Well, if you have an internal staircase, it's not 2 flats. If you've got an external staircase, it is, isn't it?
No.
Well,
why would you think that?
How do you justify that? So I don't understand.
This is just questions of clarification on the presentation.
I'm not sure what.
Well, it doesn't feel to me as if 2 staircases in the same detached house.
Chairman, I think
You're
this is out of
thinking-
order.
All right.
Thank you, Councillor Camp. Thank you, Councillor Vickers. Any more questions, please? We do. Councillor Cole.
You may not think that the metal stairs don't produce noise. Others may. How would you think about putting rubber matting on those stairs? That
Well,
would remove the noise.
The applicant is open to any solution if it's considered necessary to mitigate against any perceived impact that you think may happen.
Okay,
I don't know
very
whether
good.
any members walked up and down the staircase at the site
I
visit on
did.
Monday. I did. Yeah, I've walked up and down there.
Well, I did,
Certainly.
because I wanted to see what the heights was. I'm rather over 180. The other aspect of that then is the obscurity chosen is only 3. Now, I find I can just about see through the level 3. Would level 4 or 5 be acceptable?
But there's no reason why in principle that couldn't be. Whether it's really justified is another matter. But yes, it's not something, it's not,
I think
again,
your
it's not
client's
an
nodding his head. That's excellent. That
intransigent point.
clears
Yeah.
that up.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any more questions? I can't see any hands up. No. Thank you, Ms. Ollie. Thank you for your presentation. Councillor Kent, it's back to you as a ward member. I don't know if you have anything to say to us.
Nothing to add. I'm happy to listen to the debate and conclude what I conclude after that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kent. Then we go then, members, do we have any questions or clarification of the officer? Mr. Houston, we do. Mr. Councillor Abs, is your hand up? It is.
It was, yes. Thank you. A quick measure. It shows that the distance between the direct looking into her bedroom, which we did actually all visit, so all those that turned up on site, it's clearly less than the 21 metres that is necessary, hence the need of this privacy. Why is from an officer perspective, why is the obscure screening enough to really remove that? I mean, is that the same as frosted glass on a toilet window or something, or in your minds?
Mr. Houston, or is Mr. Till going to take this? Is it Mr. Houston's going to take this?
I'm quite happy to take this one. Your officers in this case have made a discretionary judgment on this case because the 21 metre distance is generally applied between facing windows. In this case, because there are no, the level of obscurity provided will mitigate the 21 metre distance requirement, such that the level of overlooking into neighbouring properties is felt to be sufficiently reduced by this proposal. I hope that answers, but if you want me to clarify further, I certainly can.
No supplementary. Okay, we'll move on. Councillor Rolls.
Thank you. Sorry, forgive me if I missed this. Do we have any sort of image of what this screening looks like? Because it would be really helpful, because we've sort of got part glass, and then I'm read about some of it being foliage as well, I think. So do we have that?
If we could pull up the proposed plans again, that would be useful.
If you just bear with me, members, this does require something of a technological feat.
No.
Mr. Houston, have you still got your microphone on? We can hear you stirring your tea, I think.
Yes, yes, yes. I hope you can hear me. So the proposed form of the black trellis is a close bore black trellis. We did discuss, myself and a team leader at an earlier point, we did discuss possibly conditioning vegetation, i.e. planting in association with this trellis, but we eventually concluded that that was likely to be an onerous imposition in this instance. Nonetheless, from my personal, I used to be a gardener. I gave some general advice about what planting would be best in this instance. And it is the intent to include planting of this, but we felt that conditioning planting in this case was likely to be onerous.
Thank you. No supplementary. Councillor Cole.
Thank you, Chairman. Two things.
Yep.
Firstly, does that trellis have to be black? Because it looks overbearing potentially to me.
The black colour was chosen because the existing staircase is black, but I believe if members felt it necessary, an alternative colour scheme could may be an option.
Okay. Secondly, perhaps for the public, would you be able to tell us the import of the planning appeal decision?
Chairman, I think it might be best if I take this question. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Cole. So the planning decision at appeal was that the inspector, in determining the acceptability of the staircase, when he wasn't considering the screening that's proposed here, felt that it had an unacceptable impact on neighbouring privacy and amenity. However, there was a refusal reason there in respect of the impact on the character and appearance of the area, and the inspector, mindful of the limited views from the public domain in particular, which would usually constitute a reason for refusal of poor quality development with a high level of visual impact. But from the rear of properties generally isn't considered to, where there aren't wider public views available, did not uphold the authority's reason for refusal on grounds of character and appearance of the area. So in terms of this decision, members would need to be satisfied if raising concerns regarding impact on character and appearance of the area, that first of all, the privacy screen was going to have a significantly higher level of visual impact than the existing staircase, which members may have their own feelings on the appeal of in visual terms. And secondly, that there was sufficient justification in terms of impact on public views as well as private views. And private views are defined as views from back gardens and rear bedrooms, for example, as to merit raising further concerns in respect to the screen or potentially refusal in respect of the screen.
The net result, therefore, is that unless members think that the screening makes it worse, the appeal decision makes it extremely difficult to consider removing the staircase. Am I correct?
Thank you, Chairman. I think the appeal decision sets a very difficult priority a very difficult position has been established there in respect of any potential removal of the staircase. Was an application for this screen to be refused, then it would be open to the applicant to seek an alternative, for example, or to appeal that refusal. And there is also the potential for costs where the inspector felt those may be awarded where the inspector felt that these issues were substantially addressed in the previous appeal.
Thank you very much. However, the conditions in respect of, say, a 2-metre top and rubber treads, that'd be no problem.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I can confirm the committee could impose conditions in respect of higher screening and an alternative trellis treatment. And in actual fact, the applicant has indicated in respect of an increase in the height of the screening that he would be prepared to consider that if members felt it was necessary.
Thank you.
Members, I'm just going to have a pause for a moment. Time waits for no man. It's 10 to 10. I do need to take a vote as to whether we're going to sit past 10 o'clock. If I could have a proposer, please.
I think one of the things we need to consider is whether we're going to conclude the business tonight.
We're not going to.
And if we don't think we are, then we can't sit beyond 10 o'clock.
Okay.
My feeling, Chairman, is that we won't complete by 10:30.
We're not going
to have a sufficiently robust debate. We've got 5 sets of public speakers and the officer to present. I just don't see how we can do it.
I totally agree. But I need to see this application through. Can we get this one through?
We do have 10 minutes.
With 10 minutes. I'll just focus the minds here.
I think that it's probably safe to say that the third item will not be going ahead tonight. It's going to have to be deferred to the next committee.
Mr. Bartlett, could you identify yourself, please, sir? Yeah, thank you. My apologies. You can see the first application was extremely complex. The second one we're still going through. Well, you will be advised by that by Mr. Till and his team. So
it
my
will be
apologies.
approximately 3 weeks' time.
And the speakers that have turned up tonight. Thank you. My apologies. So we'll push on for 10 minutes on this application. Councillor Cole has spoken. Councillor Rolls has come away. We now go to, I'm just looking at my notes here. Where did we get to? We've asked all our questions, so it's now open to debate.
Apologies, Chairman. I've just got a quick question. Would it be acceptable to have a condition about the light as well? The resident opposite was concerned that they might be putting in a light. If that is the case, is there some sort of condition about how it could be, a downlighter only so that the resident isn't disturbed by the light? Thank you.
I'd actually put that down as well, and that what came up, whether security should be, lights should be a condition. Right, open to the debate. You've got 8 minutes. Councillor Corver. Is that it? That was your presentation. Okay, then Councillor Cant.
Thanks, Chair. I'll keep it brief. In my view, I know this is not directly pertinent to this. I think this is covert redevelopment into 2 flats. I also don't believe that the proposal is materially altered the conclusion of the inspection, appeal rejection, that it's intrusive on neighbours, and therefore I'll be voting against it.
Thank you. Councillor Vickers.
Chairman, I don't think the noise was covered by the appeal. I think if we can put a condition on noise, that's fine. I don't think it's a necessary condition to make it any further obscure than it is now. But if it goes up to 2 meters, I don't see any way in which somebody standing on that balcony could interfere with the privacy of neighbours. I think that covers it. I think that would cover it. And obviously the condition about materials, particularly that would cover noise. I think you were covered, and I'd be happy to accept it as it is with those comments.
Thank you. Councillor Abs.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I think we hit the pertinent issue that once you make this all black, and you actually vastly increase the visual impact of this from where it was before. And the inspector certainly didn't, his comment was based on a staircase, not on a big black monolith block on the side of the building with glass top. So I'm against this, I'm afraid, in its current form. You might be able to play around with it with materials and this and that and the other, but I think we should be refusing it, to be honest.
Thank you. Councillor Barrett.
Well, I'll try and be brief as well. I'm concerned. Distance, intrusive noise. To me, it just seems to be completely out of character within that back yard of the distance between the cul-de-sac in Lyme Close and the surrounding road in Creswell. So sorry, I'm totally against.
Councillor Cole.
I think if we go against it, I think it'll go to appeal if we just go against it completely. Sadly, the thing is there now, and it's already gone through appeal once. Real life says that we should be putting this through, but with stringent conditions. Black is wrong. That colour must be different. It has to be broken up. Actually, yes, 2 meters total of screening. The glass should be increased to level 4. There should be rubber matting on the treads all the way up, because that'll remove the noise problem. And yes, any outside lighting should be agreed by the council and should be very restrictive. I would be happy to propose on that sort of basis.
Thank you. You have a second?
I would second on that basis.
Thank you, Councillor. Lastly, Councillor Doherty.
I'm entirely against this. It's retrospective, and I think it's just trying to be forced through. And I feel terribly sorry for those objectors that have had this. It's been refused by us once. It's been refused by a planning inspector. So I'm completely against it on principle. Not the look and feel of a thing, but completely against it on principle that this is how we get planning done.
Thank you. Councillor Cole's hands back up, or you're not? Is that an old hand? Okay, I have a proposer of Councillor Cole and a second of a Councillor Vickers. And we are happy with the conditions, Mrs. Armour?
Yes, I think members...
Mr. Till?
Any
observations from Mr. Till? Any observations from Mr. Till, please?
Thank you, Chairman. I'm satisfied I've made a note of conditions in reference to provision of details of a 2 metre screen to be erected subsequently to those details to be approved, details of materials for the trellis, including colours of materials, details of a noise mitigating surface for the steps to be submitted and approved, and also details of any lighting to be erected in conjunction with this development to be submitted and approved.
Members all happy with those conditions? Thank you. Therefore, the recommendation is for Head of Planning and Countryside be authorised to grant this planning application 21-03132 at 14 Lyme Close for this partial retrospective and retention of this stairway and screening. Mrs. Armour.
Okay, so those in favour of the proposal, can you raise your? Okay, and those against?
So that didn't
Oh,
get,
is anyone
Hold on.
abstaining? 2 people abstaining.
let me just count these again, please. These are against. 1, 2, 3, 4. Abstention. 1, 2.
Okay, so that proposal didn't go, so there need to be a counter proposal.
Do I have an alternative proposal, please? A proposer? Councillor Cant, and a second?
I don't know.
Councillor Doherty, thank you. Thank you. I have a proposal, Councillor
But
Cant.
on what
And a
basis?
second of,
Sorry, we need some refusal reasons.
yep.
On the basis that the inspectors' reservations about intrusiveness and appearance have not been resolved to our satisfaction.
Is it possible for us to add to that, or is it?
Sorry,
Is it
Councillor.
possible?
Add
for
away,
us to
it'd be
add-
very helpful. Thank you, Councillor Abs.
Mr. Till, have you collected those and you're happy?
So, Chairman, is it possible for other councillors to add to those?
Yes, indeed, yes,
Okay,
indeed.
great. Well, I think, we have to put in that we're concerns about the
1 minute.
well, the appearance of the place. What's been proposed is rubbish. So we'll refuse on the basis of increased visual impact, and the noise associated with and possible lighting, given electric has been put in place for external lighting. So, we've got 4 reasons in there, really.
Thank you. I've got a proposer. Is Councillor Doherty, a second Councillor Cant, Mrs. Armour.
Can I just check that Mr. Till has got those conditions down? I mean, those reasons for refusal down?
I can confirm I've got the intrusion and impact on privacy, the detrimental visual appearance, the development and the increased visual impact and noise generated by the steps and the impact of any associated lighting.
Of course, conversations at the door through deliveries and all that malarkey that will go on.
Thank you. Mrs. Armour.
So those in favour of refusal on the grounds that have just been mentioned. So I make that 4. Those against? And 3. Is there any abstentions again? Yeah. So that's refused.
That application is refused. Members, that unfortunately will, with a minute to go, I'm very impressed with your responses on this. Concludes the business tonight, and I close this meeting at 9:59. Thank you. If you'd all just stay in your positions until such time